Welcome everybody back into Nerd Sesh. As always, I'm Carson Brabbert. Alongside me is Logan Camden, and it is officially NFL playoff time. So today, we're going to be making our full NFL playoff predictions. We are going to pick all the way through the Super Bowl who we think is going to end up hoisting the Lombardi, but we are going to focus more so on the 6 wild card games that are set in stone, and we'll start with what I think is the biggest, most interesting game on the slate, Logan. Maybe there's a little bit of bias here, but I think most people would agree. Jags-Bills. We've got a humdinger coming, it would seem, in this one. What stands out to you first when you look at this matchup?
Honestly, you could say this about a lot of games. It's the quarterback duel. And I'm really fascinated by the head-to-head matchup between Josh Allen and Trevor Lawrence, specifically because, as we've talked about over the past few weeks in our reaction shows, Trevor Lawrence has been playing top 10 football over the past, I'd say
6 weeks.
Yeah, I'd say the past month, man. Since basically the beginning of December, he's been playing like a top 10 quarterback. And so I'm just fascinated by the duel that we're going to get between two of the best quarterbacks in the game. And I think Josh Allen is clearly the best quarterback in the playoff field and just the best quarterback remaining. I mean, when I think about how the playoffs could have ended up, I mean, I really think the Bills got lucky in terms of the competition that they're going to run into. Like, you told me at the start of the season that Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, and Joe Burrow would not be in the AFC playoffs. One, I would have told you I wouldn't have believed you, but
let's get Joe Burrow out of there. I'm sorry. The Bengals haven't sniffed the playoffs in 3 years.
Look,
I just
I'm
don't
not
think
saying
they should be lumped in. And also, Herbert's just better than Burrow, like, clearly.
I'm not saying that me and you didn't like the Bengals, but we picked the Bengals to miss the playoffs in back-to-back seasons, and we've been proven correctly. I'm just saying that.
I'm not saying this to you. I'm saying this to the media world that is saying, oh, thank God Joe Burrow and the Bengals aren't in there. I just went through the stats. The Bengals are one of 11 teams in the NFL that hasn't made the playoffs in the last 3 years. The Bengals suck. They don't scare anybody. They shouldn't scare anybody. They had one good run, and then another pretty good run, but that was years ago.
I'm saying this as to our expectations at the beginning of this season. You would have expected these 7 quarterbacks in the playoff field to have had all of those guys, add in Herbert and maybe like a CJ Stroud and somebody else. I just think the quarterback.
Again, I disagree. I didn't think that the Bengals would be there, but I see your overall point. I'm
just saying that
I
the
just don't like when
quarterbacks
people are like Mahomes, Lamar, Josh, and Burrow in the mighty Bengals.
I'm saying this to basically just sum up the quarterback competition that Josh Allen could potentially run into is weaker than any other year potentially of his life, of his career. This is one of the weaker quarterback fields I've ever seen from an individual conference. The NFC's kind of been dragging us down year by year with the guys they've been trotting out, but it's a little bit more open than you would have expected coming into this year, but I'm fascinated by the head-to-head matchup. Josh Allen has been, in my opinion, a top 5 playoff quarterback in NFL history. I went and looked at the numbers, and it blew me away, Carson. In his career, and we've regurgitated these stats anytime we talk about quarterbacks, but in 13 career games in the playoffs, Josh Allen is giving you 4,027 total yards, 32 TDs to just 6 turnovers, on over 60% completion with a passer rating over 100. He's second in total yards per playoff game, fewest turnovers per playoff game, and he's fourth in total TDs per playoff game. And when you look at quarterbacks and what they have done in the playoffs in terms of total points and output, there's only 3 quarterbacks with a decent sample size that have outproduced Josh in terms of total points per game. That's Aaron Rodgers with the Packers, Kurt Warner with both the Rams and the Cardinals, and Patrick Mahomes with the Chiefs. And I say this just to emphasize the fact that people try to make this a Josh Allen fault when it's really been the Bills letting him down. The Bills average 27.4 playoff points per game with Josh Allen. He averages more playoff points per game than all of these quarterbacks. Tom Brady with the Patriots, Drew Brees with the Saints, Steve Young and Joe Montana with the 49ers, Ben Roethlisberger with the Steelers, John Elway with the Broncos, and Peyton Manning with the Colts. I say this just to say, if I'm going to do a blind faith bet in a quarterback in the playoffs this year, like I've been doing with Patrick Mahomes over the past few years, there's clearly one guy that stands above the heap, and that is Josh Allen. And so I hate to boil it down as to something as simple as that, but when I look at a conference that is so devoid of elite quarterback play and guys that you can bank on, I really do look at that as a leg up for Buffalo and why I would lean on them potentially more than anybody else in this head-to-head matchup because I do have that embedded faith with Josh Allen.
Yeah.
The interesting fact with that, and related, is the fact that the Jags are a better team than the Bills, and they beat them in basically DVOA and every other metric, but Josh Allen is a superhuman. And so that's really the most interesting dynamic to me in this game. You know, the Jags are second in the NFL in turnovers this year with 31, right? Like, I think that's a really interesting dynamic, just kind of this Josh versus the world dynamic. That being said, I will let the cat out of the bag before we get into some of these other keys. I'm going to take the Bills to win this game 31-23.
Ooh, the prediction right out the gates. What if I told you, Logan, that there's a team that is 8-0 in their last 8 games, that is number 1 in point differential by far in that time, plus 153, number 1 in points scored, and number 1 in points allowed in that span, that destroyed the Chargers 35-6, handily beat the Broncos by 2 touchdowns overall on the year, got a top 5 defense, a lead against the run, very good against the pass.
Holy heel turn, Batman. Holy heel turn.
Forced the second most takeaways in the NFL, and they had a quarterback who over the last 6 weeks had 1,750 total yards, 19 total touchdowns, and 1 turnover. A supremely talented quarterback who has it all when it comes to pocket poise and arm talent and mobility and size, who's doing everything right. And that team is brilliantly coached. You put all that resume together, you put together the momentum they have, the form they've been in the second half of this season. That sounds like they should be the clear AFC favorite, right? That's the Jaguars' resume. And I do believe they have been clearly the best and most complete team in the AFC for the last 2 months. Since the receiving core got right, since they brought in Jacoby Myers, this passing game and this offense overall has become so much more explosive. They've already had great principles in the run game. They've already been this good defense that has been really good at forcing takeaways. Everything has fallen into place in a way that has just made them the most impressive team in the conference for a long time now, in a way that I still don't think they're really getting credit for. So the question is exactly what you laid out there. Against that team that has overall been the best in the conference for an extended sample size now, can Josh Allen and the Bills offense overcome that? First, I'll say this. I take whoever wins this game to win the AFC. I think these are the 2 teams that have the most compelling formulas in this deeply flawed conference for a deep playoff run. Because although there are teams that are more elite defensively than the Jags in this conference, there are 2 of them really, Denver and Houston, the Jags still being a very good defense and a significantly more explosive, proven, dynamic offense than either of those teams, with Trevor Lawrence playing at the level he's playing at, where after the truly elite tier of the guys who are in the playoffs in the AFC, of Josh Allen, of course, and then Justin Herbert and Drake Maye, I think T-Law is playing the quarterback position better than anybody else in that AFC field. They've got all that going for them, and that's why I would say they are the most complete team in the conference right now. But my gut is telling me to go with the Bills here. And that does come down to what you said, which is supreme faith in Josh Allen, especially in the playoffs. And that's the point you were hitting on. That's the point I want to hammer home, despite all the ridiculous narratives that emerge when people just straight up spout falsehoods about an individual because of team results in a team sport with 53 men on the roster in 3 phases of the game. Josh Allen actually plays his best in the playoffs. He averages 310 total yards per game. That is number 1 all time with a minimum of 8 playoff starts. He has 32 total touchdowns to 6 turnovers in the playoffs, and the Bills average 27.5 points per game. He genuinely tends to play his best football when the stakes are highest. He locks in, he plays his most focused, his most control, he limits mistakes, but he also is able to negotiate that ability to use his legs even more, make those big special plays that you have to win these high stakes games. Like, he is flat out all-time great when it comes to playoff football. And he's number 1 all-time in touchdown to turnover ratio in the playoffs among all guys with at least 10 starts on that stage. So I do truly believe that even though Josh hasn't been as flawless as he was last year, and we've talked about this with just putting a couple more balls in harm's way, taking more sacks than he did last year, when you get to the playoffs, you get the best version of him. And then we know the run game for this Bills team is elite. So those are 2 superpowers they have offensively. And then the huge X factor here, that I don't think has been discussed nearly enough when we talk about what's gone right for the Bills this year, what's gone wrong for them, and how they shape up in terms of a playoff run. Available Dalton Kincaid changes everything for this team. With Kincaid in the lineup, the Bills are 10-2. They average 30.5 points per game. Without Kincaid, they're 2-3. They average 23 points per game. When he is available, the offense really has looked like a machine. They have looked like the best unit in the NFL, you could strongly argue, other than the Rams. It's been when he's out against the Falcons, against the Texans, against the Eagles, that they've struggled. Part of that is the pressure those defenses have gotten on Josh Allen, but a big part of that is receivers being unable to get separation, because as we know, the literal wide receiver core here is rather limited. But Kincaid is the clear number one target in this offense, having a career season, who is essential as a release valve to make plays after the catch. He's the guy who can win one-on-one in a way that the receivers can't. He's the guy who can get open over the middle consistently. He has a 149 passer rating when targeted this year. Just consistently, when Kincaid is on the field, when they go to Kincaid, the Bills get exceptional offensive results. And I think how much he changes here is really underrated. So for all those reasons, with him being healthy now, I do feel really confident about this Bills offense. And I also do think, although the Jags are a very good defense, their defensive numbers are a little inflated. They've faced the second most backup quarterbacks or quarterbacks 30th or lower in EPA this year in terms of the percentage of snaps that they faced, only behind the Patriots, who we've talked about having this historically easy schedule. So they have feasted on some shitty quarterbacks down the stretch. Although they are just straight up a very good run and pass defense, they have been takeaway dependent. And I don't think they're getting those takeaways against Josh Allen, who has protected the ball so exceptionally well in the playoffs. James Cook had his fumbling issues early in the year. I think he's gotten that out of his system, and generally, when the Bills are running the ball a lot and when Josh is taking care of it exceptionally well, like last year, this was a team that was historically great in terms of limiting turnovers. I think they have the ability to tap into that. So I think the Bills should be able to put up 28 plus points in this game as they average in the playoffs with Josh. That's the standard. But of course, they've had some great offensive performances in the playoffs in games that they lost. 2021, they dropped 36 points in regulation and they lose to the Chiefs. Last year, they dropped 29 points in regulation and they lose to the Chiefs. The year before that, they had a good offensive showing and they lost by a field goal to the Chiefs. So then the question is, in this game that has three phases of the game, two sides of the ball, can the defense get a couple stops against this red-hot offense, against a quarterback that's playing at a really high level with a great offensive mind, with weapons around him who are all in flow and in rhythm? And I will say, in terms of my prediction, yes, they can get a couple stops. They can slow down the Jags offense a little bit more, enough at least for their really strong offense, the Bills, to come through and win them this football game, because the Bills defense this year, it's been a wild experience watching them. I will say, though, they finished the year on a strong note. Week 18 versus the Jets, that's meaningless. The Brady Cook Jets, one of the worst football teams in NFL history, lost their last 5 games by 27 points per contest. So throw that out, especially because a number of guys didn't play at all. But if you look at the stretch that preceded that, the second half of the Browns game and the entire Eagles game, the Bills were really dominant defensively. It was the best they've played all year. Now, the Browns, they're a really bad offense. The Eagles, they're a pretty bad offense. So you don't want to take away too much from that, but it was legitimately impressive stuff. They effectively held the Browns from putting together a single good drive in that second half, and they held the Eagles to 13 points in the entire game and 0 points in that second half. So, of course, I'm deeply concerned about the run defense here. It's terrible. They've been one of the worst tackling teams in football. They have allowed the 3rd most yards per attempt on the ground. They've allowed top 5 most rushing yards and top 2 most rushing touchdowns. Like, we know there is a major weakness on this defense. But what has been really encouraging to me is that the pass defense has rounded into really good form. When they don't blitz this year, the Bills are 2nd in EPA per pass allowed. Overall this year, they're 5th in yards per pass allowed. So, although I'm as concerned about the run defense pretty much as ever, even though they were good there against the Eagles, that was an impressive showing, it's most significant that I feel way better about this pass defense than I did to start the year, which is incredible considering Trey White and Jordan Poyer were a couple of key additions to this secondary, and they're starting. Like, you would think it's 2017. We're talking about 34-year-olds who were just brought back from retirement in Poyer's case and the scrap heap in Trey White's case. But those guys have honestly been fine in this system. Benford is awesome. Taron Johnson is a good nickel corner. Cole Bishop has really improved. I couldn't have been more concerned about that safety spot coming into the year. He's been solid. So the coverage has been legitimately good for this team recently. They're probably going to need one big play in this game. And T-Law has been locked in. He's been dialed in. But can you create that one mistake? If it's one big pass rushing rep from Rousseau and Bosa, one or the other, who are the two most talented edge rushers you've had, not consistently elite in terms of impact, but good players, can they get into the backfield once, speed him up, get a strip sack, maybe with good coverage where you force him to hold the ball and you're able to get home? They need that one big swing play, I think. I can see it. The one thing the Bills defense has consistently been very good at over the years, even with all their flaws, is forcing those takeaways in their own right. This year, they've actually been less dynamic in that regard, but it's tricky because I feel so good about how T-Law has been playing. Like, I'm extremely high on him right now. I'm extremely high on Liam Cohen, obviously. I think he's one of the sex symbols of a generation. And, as you said, their resume overall just says they're the better football team this year. But there is an element of faith I have with the Bills, mostly Josh, but overall being a team that has 7 playoff wins in the last 5 years versus the new kids on the block versus the most improved, where like everything's just coming together. But then again, Buffalo is a baffling team. So there's so many push and pull elements here that could easily justify you going either way, because the Bills have shown great flashes this year. And they've also had some stupid, ugly stretches. And it's rarely been that everything comes together for them. And as people are talking about this mounting pressure for this team, if not now, then when? I'm sitting here thinking, as a Bills fan who's watched every snap of the season, this is probably the weakest team they have had around Josh Allen since he became a superstar level player in 2020. But I do feel like with Kincaid out there and how great the offense has been with him on the field, the offense really can cook in this matchup. And the defense is trending upwards and reached a level in terms of playing meaningful clutch football, especially in second halves in recent weeks, that we didn't see from them early in the year, that I didn't really think they were capable of. So I will take the Bills to eke this out 30-27. I think it's high scoring. I think it's going to come down to 1 or 2 stops and a lot of big time drives from both these offenses. And I do trust the Bills to overcome a very good Jags defense and ultimately be able to hang points on them, because that's their formula. That's what they have to do to win. I think they can do it. What are some of the more particular little X factors that stand out to you in this game, Logan, when we really zoom in on things?
Not to be too cliche, but I really do think a turnover or turnovers are going to decide this game, just considering how good Jacksonville has been at forcing opponent turnovers. And I think these teams are so evenly matched that one mistake could make the difference. The rushing attacks really intrigue me. James Cook led the league in rushing this season. The Jags, who have had games where they've run really effectively between the tackles, they're actually tied 31st in yards per carry since week 9 out of their bye. They're actually 27th in yards per carry on the entirety of the year. So, you think about this Buffalo run defense that has been inconsistent all year long and just bad. Like, they were one of the worst rushing defenses in NFL history for most of this season. You don't really look at Jacksonville as one of those teams who could potentially exploit them, as much as one of these elite rushing attacks, say, if they had to run into Derrick Henry or something like that in this matchup, right? So that's a really interesting matchup to watch for me. Just, can Jacksonville exploit that weakness of Buffalo's? How do they fare in that matchup? And then I am looking at just the Bills' defense and how they perform, as well as, I don't want to just lump in all the Bills around Josh Allen. I wrote down how incompetent is the Bills organization in this game. McDermott and Brady's decision-making and game management, play calling, stuff like that, I think is important to monitor. But really, when we're talking about, I'm really looking at the defense. You mentioned some of the guys. Bosa, Bernard, Jones, and Poyer are all questionable in this game. Max Hairston is going to miss this one. He is out. Ed Oliver is still on injured reserve. So I'm looking at some of those. I really need Bosa out there. I really want Bernard out there. I don't know if Poyer's going to play. I'm more skeptical on if Poyer's going to be available for this game. So I'm monitoring all those things. But when I think about it, Carson, I'm going to go on the inverse of this. So ironically, I'm going to make this argument against another team when we talk about them today. But I really am leaning on Buffalo's experience on this game. When I come back to it and I think about what I'm banking on, I do think Jacksonville's the better team. I think they're more complete. I think they've been playing better football the second half of this season more consistently than Buffalo. Like December and on, they've just been the better team in my opinion. But there is just a blind faith that I'm going to lean on with Josh Allen in this football game and the Bills team. I don't know. They've just been so again, man, 27.4 points per game. I don't know if people realize like how exceptional that is for such a large sample size, man. That is 13 games of football where Josh Allen is routinely playing damn near perfect football, man. And that's what I'm leaning on. But for Jacksonville to win this game, T-Law is going to have to be methodical, avoid that back-breaking mistake, that interception in the red zone or just in general. I think Jacksonville's really going to have to establish the run, and I think they're going to have to slow down James Cook. I don't know, man. I lean on Buffalo's experience, and I think that's what I'm going to rely on this game more so than anything else.
The playoff resume for Buffalo is really interesting because they've got the most playoff wins outside of Kansas City since 2020. And yet it feels like a lot of people are like, ooh, they're playoff underperformers. And maybe you could argue that relative to their regular season standards, they are, just because they actually have the most regular season wins in that time. And Kansas City obviously has outperformed them in the playoffs, has specifically had their number, beaten them 4 times in the playoffs. But then the other side of that is only one other team ever, besides Kansas City, has beaten the Bills in the playoffs. Again, if we start with 2020 when Josh Allen became the superhero quarterback that he is. And overwhelmingly, therefore, the Bills' losses have come against an all-time great quarterback playing at an all-time great level when they couldn't get stops, when they allowed 38 points, when they allowed 42 points, when they allowed 27 points, when they allowed 32 points. The one exception is the Bengals game in which they really just kind of got manhandled in all phases. But even that was against a truly elite quarterback in Joe Burrow. So this is what we're negotiating. I do think, as flawed as the Bills may be, you have to expect them to put up big points. And then is there the offense, is there the quarterback that in this conference is going to be able to put up enough points against this flawed defense to beat the Bills? And I honestly think the Jags, especially when you consider that they are a pretty good defense, like I said, they're probably the best candidate to do it. And that's why, as a Bills fan, I was really fucking bummed when we ended up drawing the Jags in the first round. I wanted the Patriots if we couldn't get the winner of the AFC North, which of course was my strong preference, but I think the Jags are a really damn good football team. The thing is, if Trevor Lawrence plays like he's been playing, I don't know if anybody in the AFC is beating the Jags. I mean, maybe it goes without saying, but when the guy's averaging 290 total yards of offense and he's got 19 total touchdowns against 1 turnover, and he's got this really good roster and great coaching, like, I don't know how you really beat that team when he's giving you that elite production. So it's going to be up to the Bills' pass defense to step up and try to make things hard. I do have some confidence in their ability to do that, though. I mean, with how they've been playing as of late, and I have my frustrations with Sean McDermott, and they are many. They are numerous. But most of his shortcomings do show up against those truly elite quarterbacks. When it comes to a lack of creativity and scheme, when it comes to a lack of diversity, if you are asking him to make things tricky, to stick to your principles, to be good in coverage, to take away opportunities for explosive plays, generally keep things underneath and maybe muddy the coverages a little bit, the Bills have been able to do that very well against not great quarterbacks. The question is just really, what level is T-Law going to be at? Can they make him uncomfortable? Is he going to be dialed in and ripping apart these zone looks? How much are they going to blitz him? Like, how much are they going to mix things up? That's going to be a huge determining factor in this game, because if T-Law is just on fire, yeah, the Jags can absolutely hang 35 on the Bills. And then the interrelated part of that is, can the Bills stop the run at all? Because even though, as you said, the Jags haven't been an efficient rushing attack, they like to run the ball. Liam Cohen is a great run game coordinator. They are going to absolutely test the Bills on that front. So they have to keep that in check to keep this offense honest and to not get to a place where they have to overcommit on every run fake, and then maybe it's just T-Law ripping them over the part with a bunch of intermediate throws and digs and stuff that he's been really good at. Not necessarily out of play action, but just overall he's controlled that middle of the field so well. That's going to be a huge, huge test, and I think the Bills are going to come out early, and they are probably going to be very aggressive about trying to stop the run, and maybe they could get got with a shot play early, and maybe that breaks this game wide open in the wrong way. I think there's so many ways that this game can go. I feel much more confident predicting what the Bills offense is going to look like than what the Bills defense is going to look like.
I do too. I'm thinking about some of the other things on the periphery. Do you think the Matt Prater injury, does that matter to you at all? Because
it absolutely does.
I just got a notification on my phone. It says that they've signed former Steelers kicker Matthew Wright to the practice squad, which seemingly indicates that he's probably going to be promoted. And I like Matthew Wright. Anytime he was in for the Steelers in spot for Chris Boswell, he was excellent. And I think any team that signed him, he's played well. But this is a different scenario. This is playoff football, and especially when you look at this in contrast to a guy like Cam Little for the Jaguars, where for Jacksonville, with how great he's been, the Jags just need to get to the 50 in between the 50 and 40-yard line on their side of the field, and Cam Little has a chance at getting points. That's a real difference maker when we're talking about one-game scenarios, where it creates all these ripple decisions for Buffalo, where even on like extra points, say he comes out and misses something early, then you're thinking the rest of the game, are we going for it on 4th and short when it's like a 40-yard field goal? Are we going for it on extra points? Like, that is another little detail of this game that worries me a little bit with Buffalo. Just and specifically because Jacksonville is so rock solid. Like, Cam Little's got he hit the second longest field goal in NFL history last week. Like,
he hit the longest field goal in NFL history earlier this season.
That's a really big advantage in favor of Jacksonville.
So glad you brought that up. I couldn't agree more. Tyler Bass, for those who don't know, hasn't played this year, done for the year. He had season-ending surgery. The Bills' presumptive starter coming into the year, Matt Prater, who's been the starter for almost the entire season, pulled his hamstring. And this is genuinely the last thing you need, to be down to a third-string kicker in a playoff game where little things on the margins decide games like this. We just saw it with a missed kick by Tyler Loop last week, keeping the Ravens out of the playoffs, after potentially before that, it was a missed kick by Chris Boswell that maybe was going to keep the Steelers out of the playoffs. Like, we know how important that is. And when the other team has Cam Little, who is the GOAT, who's been the best kicker this season. Yes, Logan, what just happened?
Ooh, dude, we got some juicy details to talk about in our final segment, bruh. John Harbaugh just got fired.
Whoa, we are going to touch on that later. We are going to get to the coach firings that have happened. Wow, that's crazy. That's crazy. Tyler Loop, speaking of which, a little bit of blood on your hands? Perhaps. But Cam Little's been the best kicker in football this year. And like you said, his range is anything inside of 68 yards. And the Bills are in this position now where they have to go to Jacksonville instead of going to play the Steelers because of kicker issues, right? I mean, they lost games they shouldn't have lost, but 2 weeks ago, Michael Badgley has to fill in. He misses an extra point, gets blocked against the Eagles. That cost them the game. Otherwise, 2 touchdowns. They went outright 14-13. Instead, he misses extra point, and then they failed the 2-point conversion, and he missed an extra point the week before that. So obviously, they weren't going to go back to him because he was a disaster, but it's scary. I never have confidence in the kicking game for the Bills, and this whole situation is just very precarious now because even if Prater does play, Prater's not an elite kicker at this stage. He's 41 years old, off a pulled hammy. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this would be the worst way possible to lose a football game like this because Cam Little makes a 65-yarder and Matthew Wright misses a 46-yarder, an extra point or something dumb like that. It's possible that that could happen in this one, and it is worth monitoring. And another health thing that is absolutely worth monitoring is Josh Allen's foot, because we can talk about him being the best quarterback in the field, the best playoff performer in the field. He did not look 100% against the Eagles. Like, pretty clearly did not have his full mobility, did not have his full scrambling and explosive play creation out of structure, aggregated that foot that had already been injured in that game. So he didn't play against the Jets. He took the first snap to keep his start streak, and then he was out of that game. How much better does that foot look in 14 days is a big deal. Josh is an Iron Man. Josh has played through bumps and bruises. I've never really seen him adversely affected for any extended stretch. Like, that's what's so incredible about him. We're on year 6 of this totally elite quarterback production year over year that nobody else, not even Mahomes, not even Lamar, has been able to replicate in terms of consistency. So I think he should be good, but I am a little concerned about that. And then in terms of some of the other things that the Bills just need to not go catastrophically wrong for them, for once, they need to not start slow. This team is number 1 in second half point differential this year. They've been the comeback kings. They did it in week 1 against the Ravens. They did it against the Bengals. They did it against the Patriots from 21-0 down. They very nearly did it against the Eagles again. Like, there is no question. They snap into form. They play their best football after halftime. But they are consistently losing first halves this year, especially to good teams. And you just can't put yourself in that position versus the Jags. I just think they're too good a team. And look, maybe the Bills could still find a way out of that. But if they're going to especially try to go on a 4-game run, a 3-game run, a deep playoff run, you don't want to be living in those situations. So one thing that I would say specifically is at times we see a level of conservative play calling early in games where you might have a couple of runs and then my most hated third down screen, which Joe Brady is so in love with. Every series of this game, Josh Allen should be given a chance to genuinely make a play. I'm not saying they should not have a balanced offensive approach because the run game is great. The run game is stable. Absolutely, they should lean on that, and they should lean on the passing game too. But if you waste a possession, and this goes back to last year, the loss to the Chiefs, right? Where there were a couple of those hyper-conservative sequences where it felt like they took the ball out of Josh's hands down the stretch. Don't go out that way. Go out swinging. You're not going to be reckless. Josh knows how to handle these situations. He's handled them exceptionally well. Give him the chances to make the great plays. And hopefully, again, his foot allows him to scramble for 60 yards in this game if they need it and to find his way, extend a play for 5-6 seconds, and then 1 yard from the sideline, make a ridiculous throw downfield. Maybe to Brandon Cooks, who I do think is something of an X factor in this game just because I really liked seeing his emergence as a downfield threat versus Philly. He opened up a level of separation downfield, just the ability to win on a post, right? For Josh to actually launch it 40 yards downfield. Nobody else in this offense has really been able to do that. And so he may be a dinosaur, but he had 100 yards in an important game for the Bills recently, and he brings something new to this offense. So it's going to be a fascinating game, dude. I feel like my head is telling me one thing, my gut is telling me another, but then I think Liam Cohen is just smarter than Sean McDermott. I think he should coach circles around him or at least out-coach him just because he's the better coach. I don't think like the playoff experience should have a factor in that, but there is something about the novelty of this experience for the Jags and the fact that the Bills, again, they haven't won it all. They've won a playoff game every year for 5 straight years. This is a very challenging opponent to start against, but I'm going to pick them to do it. It is kind of crazy they're road favorites, though, when you consider everything. Like, they're 1.5-point favorites. That, to me, is maybe people underrating the Jags, maybe the general public overestimating the totality of this Bills roster based on reputation. That's as somebody who is picking the Bills to win this game. I'm just surprised that, like, the actual smart money, the odds makers would be like, yeah, the Bills should be favorites on the road against the team that has been mowing everybody down for 2 months.
I don't know. I would have the Bills favored by like a point. It wouldn't be by a lot, but I think I'd favor
taking
Buffalo
the hook
very slightly.
Yeah. Well, again, I'm picking them. I guess I'm just surprised that that's where the consensus is at. And part of that is this crazy narrative that I've seen going into this game and into this playoff run down the stretch of the season that I do have to talk about, which is this absolute bullshit about, okay, there's no excuses for Josh Allen now. It's what you talked about with there being not Mahomes, Lamar, Burrow, although Burrow is often not in the field, usually not in the field again. And that means that, okay, now you got to get it done. If not now, then
It's
when?
just anytime we do these be-all, end-all, it's so stupid, bruh.
It's just such nonsense, especially because the Jags are an excellent football team. And Josh could play well and still lose to the Jags because of that. And because this is probably the worst roster Josh has had around him since he became a great quarterback. And obviously, I've talked so many times about how the historical narrative around Josh is so ridiculous. When you look at how exceptional he's been in the playoffs and how his team has been let down by their defenses. But the fact that it just builds every year and the narrative becomes only bigger and stronger about, oh, he's got to prove it. He's got to do it. He's individually been historically great. But the reality is this is a team sport. And the notion that it has to be right now, time is running out. It's so stupid, dude. He's 29 years old. Drew Brees won his Super Bowl at 30. Peyton Manning won his first Super Bowl at 30. John Elway won his first at 37. Steve Young, different circumstances, but he won his Super Bowl at 33 years old. This obsession we have with every year, if a great quarterback doesn't make or win the Super Bowl, it's a failure, is just totally absurd to me in a team sport. Because beyond this year, Josh is going to continue to have chances, and the Bills are going to continue to be in the mix every year because he's the reason they're in the mix every year. They have the most wins in the NFL since 2020 because they score the most points in the NFL since 2020 because they have Josh Allen. People try to make it like every season is the last chance for this team. I mean, how many times have we heard that, Logan? Oh my God, Stephon Diggs is gone. Dude. It's time for a rebuild in Buffalo. They're going to fall off. We heard it before this year. We hear it every damn season at this point. And that couldn't be further from the truth. As they prove time and again, they are always winning 11-plus games every single year in a way nobody has done. The Ravens have missed the playoffs multiple times. The Chiefs missed the playoffs this year. The Bengals have only made the playoffs twice. So I know I'm fucking beating this drum, but do not talk about them as if they're one of the AFC's elite teams because they are just not. They haven't come close to the playoffs in 3 years. Josh Allen gives the Bills a chance every year. And if you don't understand that he is the formula, he is the reason that they are in divisional rounds and championship games year after year, and that he is the reason they are going to keep coming back to those games. And maybe when they put the truly strong roster around him, that'll be when they win the Super Bowl. I just don't know what you're actually watching. And it just feels dishonest and lazy, and this narrative is so tired. And the addiction to making every team result all about the quarterback is so exhausting, and it is so bad for discourse about this sport. And I cannot believe how many people pick this stuff up and run with it. It is
yeah, you should.
Infuriating. You should. Well, I believe it. I'm used to it, but it's so stupid.
It is so stupid. Some of the most interesting numbers I was coming across when I was comparing Josh to some of these other legendary quarterbacks. Peyton Manning, right, got that monkey off his back when he won the Super Bowl against the Chicago Bears, right? In Peyton Manning's career with the Colts, he averaged 22 points per game. Dan Marino in his career with the Dolphins, and obviously Dan never won a Super Bowl, 21 points per game with them. Brett Favre, who infamously got that Super Bowl, it's so crazy the way a Super Bowl will build this impenetrable cocoon around you for the rest of your career. Ben Roethlisberger and all of his playoff shortcomings, and don't get me wrong, Ben had good individual games, and not all those losses are his fault. He played below his standard in multiple playoff games. But because he has 2 Super Bowls, it takes away from him. Brett Favre averaged 24 points per game in his career with the Packers. Josh reminds me so much about the discourse around Aaron Rodgers in his Packers career in the playoffs, where every time Green Bay, and it wasn't every game, there were 2 games I pointed at, because I went back in one of our pods years ago and I went down every Aaron Rodgers playoff game, and there are 2 games that you can point to where he didn't play up to his standard. In Aaron Rodgers' playoff career, he averaged 28 points per game as the quarterback for Green Bay. It's like...
Yeah, and his individual numbers are absolutely ridiculous.
Great.
They're normal Aaron Rodgers stuff.
It is the most frustrating thing in sports, and that's why this isn't objective. I'm rooting for the Bills this year. I want the Bills to win the Super Bowl. I'm hopeful that this is the year that Josh Allen can do it. And if Josh does it, who knows, man? Maybe I'll say, let's go, in the Steelers get balanced, I'll say, let's go Lamar, and let's get you a ring so we can get this nonsense discourse out of the way. I completely agree with what you just said, every single word.
And by the way, if people think that I am in some way trying to preemptively soften the blow and be, making excuses for the Bills if they do lose, I'm really not. I'm going to take the Bills to make a run. I'll tell you that. Like I said, I already have them beating the team that I think is the most complete and strongest in the AFC. So if you can follow where the pattern's going, I'm going to have the Bills winning more games than just that. That's not it. And it's all going to depend on how they play, right? If Josh Allen plays poorly, and that's the reason they lose, I'll get on Josh Allen for that, obviously. What is so mind-numbing, though, is Josh Allen can play one of the greatest quarterback games ever in 2021. He can play really good games in the last 2 years against the Chiefs. And it's still, when is he going to get it done? And what's driving me crazy, all this stuff is driving me crazy, more than it should, but everybody knows how much I love Josh. There are so many people who right now, it's like they're getting more on Josh for a theoretical playoff run and potential playoff loss that hasn't even happened because Josh isn't going to have to face Mahomes and Lamar who aren't in the field. Then they're actually being critical of the guys who did miss the playoffs. And I'm not saying, by the way, that they are the reasons their teams missed the playoffs. Certainly not Patrick Mahomes. I think he was holding things together for his team. As we saw, they fell apart without him. Lamar didn't play his best this year. He has some culpability, but also it was a deeply flawed roster, and Lamar wasn't 100%. Like, overwhelmingly, I think great quarterbacks get too much flack when their teams lose because they are very rarely the problem, especially over the sample of an entire season. But it's crazy to me that, like, people are so obsessed with this. Ooh, the team result is all about the quarterback, but only if it's bad for Josh Allen. Because if it's bad for Mahomes and Lamar, that's fine. Bad seasons, whatever.
I don't know
write
if
it
you
off.
saw what
But
happened
Josh,
today. And I want to be clear about something very clear when I say this, too. Lamar Jackson did everything in his power for the Baltimore Ravens to win that game against Pittsburgh. He had 2 touchdowns, 170 yards on 6 of 8 passing in the final fourth quarter against Pittsburgh, and he led them down the field to set up a game-winning field goal. It's like, Josh Allen did the same fucking thing against the Kansas City Chiefs, bro. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, but
Yeah.
like Cam Newton today on TV I saw was like going to bat for Lamar Jackson, and it's like Lamar Jackson was 0-5 against teams over 500 this year. And I completely agree with the sentiment. That's not all on Lamar. Baltimore's
No.
team was not good this year because football
100%.
is a sport with a roster with 53 people every game, man.
100%. And it's just so crazy to me how much people take for granted a guy who gives you such a high offensive floor is so consistently productive there that you win 12 games every year, even if your run defense is one of the worst in NFL history, even if your defense going into the last couple weeks was like 22nd in points per drive. Again, they improved that over the last few weeks, but that was the reality for most of the Bills this year. They were a bad defense, and they were still a very good football team because of the one guy who has consistently elevated them to the best regular season results in football, more so than Mahomes, so than Lamar over these last 6 years. So if you're saying we got to hold Josh to a super high standard individually because we can't give him all that praise. We can't say he's the best. And then also say, oh, it's okay if he doesn't play that well in the playoffs. I agree with you. But when he does play really well and the team just isn't good enough or the team that they're playing against is better, don't put that on Josh if he's not responsible for it. And I don't want to get into the whole thing. But yeah, even if you go through some of the last 2 games where people have said, oh, but they had the ball and they didn't win the game on the final drive. I mean, first of all, he makes an incredible throw to Stephon Diggs that is dropped if you look back 2 years ago. And that probably would have put them in position to score a touchdown. But whatever. Either way, he got them into field goal range, and Tyler Bass missed. Last year, I understand you can say, hey, don't be in a position where you're on 4th down and you got to make kind of a miraculous throw. But the more you watch the throw that he made to Dalton Kincaid, the more painful it becomes and the worse it becomes that Kincaid did not catch that ball that hit him in both the hands against an all-out blitz. And at that point, the Bills would have been in position to at least get themselves tied with a field goal. And it also would have been to tie the year before. So I don't know. I just find there is so much intellectual dishonesty that comes to the surface when we talk about Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills in the playoffs. The Bills have had their playoff shortcomings. Josh Allen has not ever been the problem. He has been the thing lifting them up, making them the team that they are, bringing them as close as they have been. And this year, maybe the field is flawed enough in the AFC, and maybe they can do enough around him, and he'll be great enough that they do get through.
I like to think the Nerd Sesh audience is all Josh Allen pilled by now, and they're like, God damn, these guys keep telling us about fucking great Josh is. We know.
Yeah, honestly, that probably is going to be a lot of people. They're probably going to be like, all right, that's enough about that. But I got to get it out of my system because
I agree.
It's been the thing I've been seeing most in terms of the narratives and the news cycle. And Twitter's probably showing it to me to make my blood boil because they want me to go commit some sort of crimes because that's Elon's objective. But man, it really does make my blood boil because it's really stupid. Let's move on to the next game. I think that's enough Bills-Jags talks for now. Chargers-Patriots, Logan. What stands out to you first with this game?
I am surprised that the Chargers are in the playoffs, admittedly, and I think it is a testament to Justin Herbert and how special he is as a quarterback and a talent that they have gotten this far, despite all of the injuries they've suffered this year. I believe Herbert was number 1 in pressure rate during the regular season. That's really what this game boils down to me. I'm not going to have any big takeaways about Justin Herbert after this game, even if he shits his pants again. I really don't care if Herbert throws – I mean, maybe he can throw 3 of the worst interceptions I've ever seen, and maybe I can be like – I can say he had a bad game. But, like, even if Herbert stinks it up, Herbert has played with his back against the wall all season long. And like you, I think he would have ended up as either my 3rd or 4th MVP. I think you had him 3rd on your MVP ballot. He would have been in my top 5 MVPs this year. The numbers aren't going to corroborate it, but when you really look at the circumstances that he's dealing with offensively, it's a miracle that the Chargers got here. Like, I just don't think the Chargers have the dogs, man. I think even with the Patriots dealing with some of these injuries defensively, Harold Landry and Robert Spillane are questionable. Those are meaningful differences to me with New England. Regardless, the Chargers' offensive line is not going to be up to snuff. Alton Slater aren't going to play in this game. They've been injured basically all season long. And I look at what's happened in New England's losses. Like, I'm not saying that it's impossible for the Chargers to win this game. I just think their defense is going to have to really suffocate New England. And all of New England's losses, Drake Maye has had at least 1 turnover, and he's been sacked 3 times in each one of those games. And the Chargers' defense is good. It's not like I can't see those things happening. I just think there's a really hard cap on how many points the Chargers offense can put up because of how bad this offensive line is. I don't think the Chargers are scoring more than 24 points in this game. And I think it's going to be a hard ask for me to think that the Chargers defense can hold the Patriots to below that. Like, there's just a lot on Herbert's plate. And I think he's going to be under duress a lot of this game the way he has been all year long. I really fail to see them establishing the running game. I just think the odds are stacked up against Herbert in a way that are hard for me to see him overcoming. I think that Drake Maye would have to play well below his MVP standards in this game. I think the Chargers defense would have to be super disruptive. Again, ton of pressure, forcing turnovers, and they eke out a victory. And because of that, I'm going to take New England. I think it's a close game, but I'm going to take the Patriots 27-20, man. I think their offense just easily produces more than LA's. This is going to be a close game, man. I don't think New England runs away with this game by any means, but I still feel like the odds are stacked up against Herbert.
Logan, maybe I'm listening to my gut a little bit too much, but I've got a gut feeling again.
Oh, my gosh.
Before sitting Justin Herbert, the Chargers have won 4 of their last 5, so before they punted on Week 18 against the Broncos, and they'd won 7 of their last 9, and that included dominant wins over the Vikings, Steelers, and Cowboys, solid football teams, and wins over the Eagles and the Chiefs, of course, when they still had Patrick Mahomes. And they could have easily beaten the Texans if not for the failures of the kicking game, which took 4 points off the board, which was the difference, a chip shot field goal and an extra point, and an awful red zone drop by Gadsden in which they turned a drive that would have ended in points, certainly, whether it was 3 or 7, and ended up being a turnover because it fell into a DB's hands. So they've been playing winning football. And I think Justin Herbert is, of course, where you start there, and that's a given. How elite he's been, the shit he's doing under insane duress with offensive injuries around him, obviously losing their 2 best tackles for the year, and for a long stretch of the year being down multiple running backs, and he's got a broken left hand, all this crazy warrior stuff that he's doing. But the other key component is this defense and the level they're playing at. Over the last 6 weeks, they're allowing 17 points per game and 283 yards per game. And that's facing some teams that are not necessarily the best offensively, but are legitimate playoff opponents. And that is really what could be the difference maker in this matchup to me. I really like the Chargers defense, and I don't like the Patriots defense. The Chargers, top 10 in sacks. I think they've got really good edge play overall. Tui Pelotu, over 13 sacks this year. Khalil Mack, still a really good pass rusher. Odafe Owe as your third guy. Like, they've got impact players there. I like the linebackers overall. I like the secondary, and you've got a superstar there in Derwin James. They've just been a really, really good defense. They were the number one scoring defense in the NFL last year, and I think they've rounded into their best form in the home stretch of this season, playing their best football right now. They've allowed the lowest opponent passer rating in the NFL. They're 6th in yards per drive allowed. And then I look at the Patriots, and I do think defensively, a lot of their numbers are inflated by what I believe might be the easiest schedule they've faced in terms of the opposing offenses in NFL history. When you adjust for opponents and the caliber of the teams you're facing, they're 23rd in defensive DVOA. I don't like their pass rush. They're tied 22nd in sacks, and they faced one good offense this year, literally, in the Buffalo Bills. The next best offense that they faced with their starting quarterback was the Pittsburgh Steelers, Logan. The Pittsburgh Steelers, who are 16th in points per drive. That even feels high when you watch them play. I just think there's a lot of mediocrity on this defense that has been covered up by facing truly horrible offenses, because it's not just the crazy easy schedule on paper that I mentioned. They've also had good injury luck where they're playing Lamar. He gets hurt in that game. The stat I mentioned earlier, 61% of their snaps have been against either backup quarterbacks or quarterbacks ranked 30th or lower in EPA. So essentially backup caliber. Like, that's crazy. So you mentioned some of the injuries they have, questionable guys. They also do get Milton Williams back, and that's big. That'll help the run defense, which noticeably got worse after he got hurt earlier in the year. But even though the Chargers' offensive line is as concerning as any one unit in the playoff field, you know, you take a team like the Panthers who flat out suck out of it, right? If we look at the AFC, I'm really worried about the Bills' run defense. There's a number of concerning units, actually, because it's a very flawed field this year. That offensive line is horrible. But of all the teams that could capitalize on that and really wreak havoc and get a ton of pressure, I think the Patriots are one of the least capable in the playoff field to do that. I really don't like their pass rush. Now, least capable doesn't mean they won't get a little pressure, right? It's just like when you're playing the Bills' run defense, you may not be a good rushing team. That doesn't mean you aren't going to be able to expose their run defense at all, because maybe the run game is normally kind of a zero for you, and now you're able to get something going in that regard. Just like I think the Patriots are normally a very anemic pass rush, but maybe they can get a little bit more pressure in this one. I think that's the expectation. But I don't see them really doing anything to make Justin Herbert uncomfortable, especially compared to what he's been going through. The hell he's already survived against the Texans and the Eagles of the world, these hellacious defenses, hellacious pass rushes, and he has still found a way in the most condensed of pockets, making these tight window throws with defenders in his face, draped all over him, absorbing contact, hanging tough over and over again, all the arm talent in the world, elite pocket presence, elite processing, elite size, and he can make plays with his legs, and he's done that more effectively than ever before. I think both these quarterbacks are phenomenal, and they're kind of the prototype for what an elite guy looks like in today's NFL, because they just both check so many boxes, and they've both been phenomenal under pressure this year. I think Drake Maye has the most passing touchdowns under pressure. He's number one in EPA per dropback under pressure. He's been great there. Both of these guys elevate the hell out of their supporting cast. If you look at the players around them offensively, I mean, the Patriots' offensive line is not as terrible as the Chargers, but it's not good. The pass catchers for the Patriots are underwhelming. And so the expectation is both these guys are going to carry their flawed supporting casts. Herbert a little more so because the offensive line is that terrible. But I trust Justin Herbert with my life. And maybe that's going to lead to a brutal death for me. Maybe that will be my downfall. And I know that's maybe controversial because the two playoff games we've seen from him, I mean, the Texans game was really bad and the Jags game they choked away. But as I've said so many times, I am not going to overreact to a 2-game sample size when I have more than an 80-game sample size of you being extraordinarily elite. And this year, I actually think is the best football Justin Herbert has ever played. So if these quarterbacks are the determining factor, I would say that I have equal confidence essentially in both of them, but I maybe like Herbert a little bit more, especially in this game, because Maye is facing the tougher defense. Maye is facing the defense that I think can actually make him uncomfortable, can actually get pressure, has more playmakers. And so I'm going to go with the Chargers. I think it's kind of a gritty battle. I'm going to take the Chargers 24-21.
I think Maye's been the best quarterback in football this season, and I'm banking on him playing like it.
That's all it comes down to?
Well, that and everything I mentioned earlier, I think the Chargers are the worst team. I think that I mean Herbert maybe not under duress like he was against Philly and Houston. That offensive line sucks. I think
horrible.
New England wins at the line of scrimmage convincingly, and I think Drake Maye plays like the better quarterback, and that's what it comes down to me. I like the Patriots in the trenches, and I like Drake Maye. And
the thing is, I think the Patriots are bad in the trenches too. I mean, they're not Chargers bad.
I think
but
that
they're bad.
I think that they're going to get pressure on Herbert. I think that offensive line is so catastrophically bad. I'm just not betting.
It is
on it. I'm not betting on a team with an offensive line like that to win a playoff game.
I understand it, man. And that was my thought too. When Joe Alt went down for the season, I was like, man, props to Herbert for doing what he can. But there's a ceiling on this team. And there is still a ceiling on them, obviously. I'm really concerned about the offensive line too. I don't think the Chargers can go out there and win the Super Bowl. But can they get one with this defense against a team that hasn't been battle-tested whatsoever? And I'm not somebody who believes that's like a big thing, right? But nobody's been more battle-tested than the Chargers. They've been playing football on hard mode for a long time, and they've been winning football games on hard mode. I understand what you're saying, but this formula was enough for them to beat several really good teams. And again, the most recent loss to the Texans was a game that's facing who should be their nightmare, right? The best defense, the best pass rush in the NFL, and they very arguably should have won that football game because Herbert was that good and the defense was that good. So I'm just not as bought in on the Patriots as you are. I think it is significant that they have the third easiest schedule in NFL history this year. You can only play who's in front of you. But again, when you've only played one good offense, and that offense shredded you for 35 points, a vast majority of them in the second half, that concerns me. And there's very little precedent for a team having this light a schedule than getting into the playoffs, at least being this good. The only other team to win 14 games while only beating one team 500 or better, or zero teams actually in their case, I believe, was the 99 Jags, who did get crushed by the Titans in their second playoff game. I'm not saying that has a lot of bearing on the Patriots. I'm just saying it's very rare that we've seen a team rack up this many wins while playing this few quality teams, beating this few quality teams. I do think the offense is legitimately awesome, but I do worry about the lack of really good offensive players around Drake Maye against a really good defense, and I just think the defense is fake. I think the Patriots are not a good defense at all, even though some of the simple basic numbers paint them as good defense because of the horrible offenses that they face. So I'm going to take Herbert to do it again. I mean, he's done it under really tough circumstances more than anybody in the NFL this year. We talk about reputation and great quarterbacks getting unfair amounts of blame. Justin Herbert, if they make a run this year, it'll be one of the most heroic in terms of a quarterback carry job we've seen. I would hope to God it changes perception of him and catches up to the level of player that he's actually been for years, and especially this season. Yeah, I think they can win ugly again. And so I'm going to take the Chargers to do that by a field goal. I think this game is pretty much a toss-up.
I mean, I think these are probably the two closest games that, I mean, I'm really close on, honestly. This is the most open I think the NFL has ever been in any capacity since we've maybe started the pod, man. But
yeah,
I think these are the two closest games I was on to 50-50. But yeah, I'm leaning on New England 27-20.
All right, let's move to the NFC game that, Logan, I know you said you were very excited for when we just gave our quick initial takes on these upcoming playoff games at the end of our Sunday show. Packers-Bears. We've got a historic rivalry. We've got two teams that don't have much good momentum going into the playoffs. Who's going to be able to get that right, and how so in terms of the keys that stand out to you here?
I'm going to take the Bears to win this game, man.
Wow. This is fun because, as you're saying, I think this is the most chaotic playoff field overall, the most chaotic season. I think that's going to be the trend throughout the whole playoffs. But wildcard weekend, you look at a lot of these games and yeah, you really could go either way. It's not often that we split on back-to-back games, Logan, with our hive mind, that we just disagree, but I'm going to take the Packers in this one.
That's why I'm so excited for this year. And I want to be clear about something. If Micah Parsons was healthy, I would take Green Bay to win this game. That's really the big difference maker for me.
If my aunt were a mechanic, she'd be a mechanic.
Dude, I love Mike Tomlin. What a bar. What a bar, man.
Yeah, that's what he said.
If my aunt had pedals and wheels, she'd be a bicycle, you know?
Right.
The difference to me really is the running game that the Bears have figured out. They've got the second most rushing yards per game since week 9. They're fourth in offensive EPA per rush. And in that same time period, Green Bay is third in most rushing yards per game allowed since Week 9. It's really Chicago's ability to figure out how to weaponize that attack. And the reason I'm so 50-50 on this game, though, is my faith in the quarterbacks. I'm nervous about Caleb Williams going into his first playoff game, specifically just because of his consistency. And I know Jordan Love maybe hasn't been the most consistent in playoff games or when the Toyotathon isn't on, but he's got experience in these games, and Green Bay has experience in these games. And some of this embedded faith that I'm talking about with Buffalo, I do have with Green Bay. You know, Green Bay's been here. There's something about Chicago, man. I just can't. There's something special about this team, man. I know none of the numbers, none of the advanced metrics, the DVOAs. I like the momentum that they've built up over these past couple of weeks. I think that they've gotten healthy at the right time.
And back-to-back losses?
Not in back-to-back losses, but they've been, I don't know, man. They give me a little bit of a, I feel like they're going to, I can't pick them to get bounced in round one. There's something about this team, man, that I get with like Washington last year where I think they're going to at least get one. I have them winning this game 27-26. I think it's going to come down to a field goal. I think it's going to come down to a late game TD. Like, I think it is going to be a late game drive where either Jordan Love delivers or Caleb Williams delivers, but I just got a weird feeling about this game. In Chicago, this is going to be so cliche, but like, I think Chicago is going to want it more, man. I think I think these fans are going to fill up the stadium. This is a blood rivalry. I think it's the second best rivalry in football. Chicago, Green Bay, man. Baltimore, Pittsburgh, storied stuff. Blood sport, man. Jean-Claude Van Damme. I'm taking Caleb Williams, and I'm taking Ben Johnson. I think it's just going to mean more to Chicago, and I think they really established this running game. The one thing I will say that makes me nervous about Chicago, Rome Odunze is questionable for this game. I think they need Odunze out there to win this football game. I think he's their best receiver, but I don't know, man. There's something that I just have a gut feeling about Chicago coming into this game that I can't shake. And so I'm going to take the Bears to win this one in a 1-point game.
Logan, maybe our guts are acting up. Maybe we've got some sort of microbacteria that we need to be examined for, because both of us are going with those funny feelings in our guts quite a bit in this episode. I have the opposite feeling with the Bears. Well, it's not a gut feeling at all. It's more so a very measured, objective perspective on a team that I think definitely had a magical run for a time this year where they were winning some of these miraculous games and the vibes were high, and it was Christmas time in Chicago. And I think that luck has already started to run out with them losing back-to-back close games now, where they had been winning so many miraculous, close, dramatic finishes on the year. And I just really don't believe in Chicago. I read all these numbers last show, but they're 16th in point differential. They're 16th in DVOA. They're bottom 5 in yards allowed per rush and per pass. They lost 3 of their last 5 games. The defense is just straight up bad at stopping the run and stopping the pass. They are incredibly dependent on takeaways, more so than anybody else in football, and it's really not even close. And the offense is good, but inconsistent and slow starting, especially in the pass game. So I look at the head-to-head matchups that we've seen between these two teams, because we got 2 of them. Packers had double-digit leads in both games, and they had a double-digit lead in the second one, a 16-0 lead, without Jordan Love playing for most of that game because he got hurt. And when all of their season-ending injuries had already happened, they didn't have Micah, they didn't have Tucker Kraft. So now you put Jordan Love back in this game, and I just think they're the better football team. And both these teams had ugly finishes to the regular season, right? Both of them ended on losing streaks of multiple games. But with Green Bay, it is worth remembering that in games Jordan Love starts and finishes, they are still 9-4-1. They score 25 points per game. No, they are not the team that I thought they could be with Micah Parsons and Tucker Kraft. Of course, those are huge losses on both sides of the ball, especially Micah. But Jordan Love, when he was on the field, was damn good this year. And the Packers were pretty damn good overall when he was out there too. He was second in EPA per play this year, averaged almost 8 yards per pass attempt, 101 passer rating, 23 touchdowns to 6 picks. It was the cleanest football he's ever played. It was the most he's elevated this offense ever. And I just don't think the Bears defense can slow this Packers offense down with Love out there. I think the Packers are going to be able to consistently get their run game going against this team in a way that they hadn't necessarily been able to week. And I think that really greases the wheels of this offense. And the Bears pass defense is bad too. The secondary is bad. The pass rush isn't good. I just think as long as the Packers can avoid the big mistake in this game, they can really move the ball on Chicago in a balanced fashion. And I do believe that Jordan Love can avoid the big mistake. I understand he's had a couple memorable turnovers this year, but he's kept his interception rate, his turnover rate very low overall.
They are going up against the number one turnover defense in the NFL, which I know is, there's some inherent volatility and variability there, but Chicago has been really good at forcing turnovers.
But that's what I'm saying. They are incredibly dependent on that because when you're bottom 5 at everything else defensively, you live and die by if you can make that one big play. And I think the Packers know that, and I think they have to drill that into Jordan Love that you are not going to make that one dumb play that could swing this game, that could give them life. Because when you think about how slow the Bears start, too, it just feels to me like the Packers should be able to jump out to a lead and kind of dictate the game on their terms. And if they can really get the run game going early, then you open up the potential for some play-action shot plays, and Christian Watson can be a weapon there. He had a couple huge plays against Chicago in the first meeting. We just saw back-to-back teams shred Chicago with downfield passing. I mean, the Niners and the Lions both really good receivers just really running open over the middle of the field. Like, there were kind of free eats there. So I just think the Packers have all the opportunity to move the ball on the Bears comfortably. And then I look at Chicago's offense, and Caleb has been inconsistent. I like Caleb. I'm optimistic. He's gotten a lot better. He's not nearly the quarterback that Jordan Love is right now. Like, I think there's still a gap between the two of them pretty clearly. And that includes in this matchup where Caleb's only completed 55% of his passes in 2 games versus Green Bay. And outside of a couple great plays to finish that second game, and they were a couple great plays, the 4th down conversion on the final drive of regulation, and then the touchdown throw in overtime. Those are great moments, but outside of that, he mostly struggled. And even though the Packers don't have Micah, which obviously changes things, like you said, you would have taken the Packers if they had him. He was the ultimate drive killer, game breaker for them. I still think Jeff Hafley is really good at creating a muddy picture. I think he can challenge Caleb as a processor and a decision maker, where he still obviously has a lot of progress he needs to make. I think that's where you see some of these inconsistent, sporadic performances where he's ultimately just not finding completions in the offense. I think the Packers can still make that hard on him, and they still just have more talent on the field defensively than Chicago does, certainly. So even with the injuries that Green Bay has endured, and they've been brutal, and obviously I was so optimistic about this team preseason, and it's just not possible for them to be that level of team with all the guys they've lost, I still trust them more than Chicago on both sides of the ball. So I'm going to take Green Bay 27-20 in this one. You're probably right with the vibes of Chicago this year and the vibes of their head-to-head games. Something crazy is most likely going to happen at the end of this game. But I don't know. I can't bank on the Bears doing something crazy again when I think they're so flawed, and I just feel like the Packers have more paths to dictating this one.
I don't blame you. I mean, they've had a lot of late-game magic, too. Like, the Bears haven't been consistent. Like I said, Green Bay's got a track record with them. I don't know.
And the Bears beat a lot of bad teams close. They're 2-4 in their division, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, I don't know. I think this one's going to come down to the wire, man. I think it's going to be really, really close. And that's what's so strange, man, is like any interdivision, like anytime a team is going to go head-to-head for the 3rd time in a single season, there's always the chance that something wonky could happen just because it's nobody that knows you better than somebody in your own division. So I think this is one of my most intriguing games. I'm so excited for this one, but something about Chicago, man. I don't know.
Wow.
They got a hold on me, man.
That's interesting. I feel like they don't have a hold on me at all. We'll see, Logan. Does your magical, whimsical optimism come through, or does my hardened pessimism come through? Only one way to find out. I also do think coaching battle is going to be really interesting in this one because you got 2 great young minds. Obviously, LaFleur, much more experienced as a head guy than Ben Johnson, but Ben Johnson is amazing. I thought LaFleur really got the better of him in the first meeting between these 2 teams. That's going to be a key determinant in this one, especially because I do think the Bears start slow. Sometimes when the Packers get up big, LaFleur can get a little conservative with the play calling. And that's not the move in this one because this is a Bears team that has found life late in games. They've found their way back in to some games that it seems like they should have been out of. They did it against you. They almost did it against you twice. I mean, the first game came down to Caleb throwing a red zone interception. So stick to your principles. Trust Jordan Love. That's the big thing. Trust Jordan Love, man. Jordan Love's an elite quarterback. You know, he's top 10. He's shown that this year. So let him do his thing, and I think Green Bay can win the game. if they do that, if they play up to their potential. If Chicago wins, I think it'll be because they force at least one turnover. And obviously, that's always a factor. But specifically for them, I think it's pretty essential. They need maybe that one Jordan Love goof play. They have to be able to consistently run the ball because I don't trust them to consistently pass the ball successfully against this Green Bay defense. But then, if they get the run game going, if Caleb can hit on a couple of explosives, again, not methodical drives, but if he can do one or two of those Caleb, holy shit, what an arm talent kind of moments, or he escapes and makes a huge play with his legs, like, I don't think their formula is Caleb going 28 for 34, right? A super efficient passing performance. I think it's going to be more so, let's run the ball well. Let's force 1, 2, 3 turnovers defensively. And Caleb, you make plays in specific spots when we need them. But ultimately, I'm just less confident in them doing that than I am in Green Bay winning this football game. Let's look elsewhere in the NFC, Logan. Eagles, Niners. San Francisco traveling to Philly in this one. What stands out to you first here?
I'm betting on the coaching in this game. I'm going to take the Niners to beat Philly. Yeah. What you were just saying about Green Bay and Chicago, I don't know, man. Look, Eagles fans, I have been wrong about you guys all year long. I have taken you completely.
They're going to light you on fire.
They are. I don't care, man. I really don't care anymore.
You got nothing to live for? Oh, God,
buddy. I don't like anything about Philadelphia, man.
The city? What are you talking about? It's the city of liberty, brotherly love.
The brotherly love. Yeah. Look, Philly's defense is elite. That's it. I just think the coaches are idiots. I think the Philadelphia coaches are idiots.
Respect Vic Fangio, real quick.
Fangio's awesome. I think Patullo and Sirianni reek of idiocy.
Cook.
And so that's it. When I look at the Niners, I go, wow, I love Kyle Shanahan. I love Kubiak. I love Robert Saleh. And when I think about them getting their guys prepared to go for a playoff game, I get it. Because I am constantly fighting between two principles. I look at the Niners' schedule this year, and they have not beat a legitimate contender all year long. And that is my hang-up with San Francisco. They don't really have a great win except for an early win, I think, against Seattle. And then I want to say they beat L.A. early on in this year. That's it. And those are early season stretches when teams hadn't hit their stride. They have not been good against great teams in the second half of this season. I look at Philadelphia and I go, wow, Philadelphia does have some quality wins against good opponents. But I think about these offenses and needing to deliver points in big situations. And I just asked myself, what offense do and I get it, San Francisco hasn't been good in the past like 4 or 5 weeks against great teams. I don't know, man. I'm betting on blind faith in this one, and I just expect Shanahan and this offense to prepare better against Philadelphia, and I expect San Francisco to be able to get their ball to their playmakers more routinely than Philly. McCaffrey's a huge difference maker in this game for me in terms of down to down and moving the ball on drives. This is going to be a really close game. My lack of faith in Philly's offense is kind of balanced out by my lack of faith in San Francisco's defense. Like, this is a very balanced matchup. I am almost damn near 50-50. I picked the Green Bay-Chicago game to be decided by 1 point. I'm going to take this one to be decided by 2 points. I'm going to take San Francisco 26-24. But I'm betting on the coaching staffs, man. There's something about San Francisco's coaching staff that I just believe in. And I think there is and I get it. I've picked Philly to lay an egg so many times this year, and they never do it when I pick them to lay an egg. But I think this year, I think this game, they just do it. And so, yeah, man, I feel crazy for picking this one, but I'm going to take I don't think I've been right on a game I've picked against Philly this year, but I'm going to do it again, and I'm going to take San Francisco.
Eagles do lay eggs. Eagles lay eggs, so eventually you're probably going to be right. I mean, I don't know when their mating season is. I'd probably have to dig into the numbers on that. But I am going to take Philly to win this game. So this is crazy. We've disagreed on 3 straight. It is really close for me, too, though. It was another one of those damn near toss-up games. But I can't call it a toss-up because I am worried about the Niners' injuries. Obviously, the defense has been decimated, and now it might be even more decimated because you've got Tatum Bethune out, you've got D. Winters questionable. That linebacking core just continues to get thinner and thinner. Offensively, Trent Williams and Ricky Pearsall, both questionable, and they definitely need them back out there. The Niners need their offense at full strength. I don't know if we're going to see that. And I also think tough luck for the Niners. Like, such a great season to be 12-5, all things considered, a huge bounce back. But if you just think about the injuries they have had to endure and then how things shook out at the end of the season for them in terms of the standings, they came into week 18 with a chance at the 1 seed. Now, Seattle was the better football team, so you can't be like, oh, what a squandered opportunity. But that was on the table, the 1 seed. And then they could have been the 5 seed, unlikely because the Rams would have had to lose. But then they would have played the Panthers, right, which would have been obviously the best first-round matchup they could possibly draw. And then they really could have been the 6 seed and played the Bears if Philly just played their starters and won against the Commanders. And I'm highlighting all these options because all of those obviously would have been strongly preferable to winding up in the 6 seed versus the Eagles. Maybe you disagree. Maybe you think Chicago's as good as Philly. I don't. I think even with all Philly's flaws, they're just more talented. That defense is still game-changing. And so I think that's unfortunate for the Niners. They do need all their dudes out there offensively because this Eagles defense is elite. And if you look at the 8-week stretch after their bye, before week 18, when again they just punted on that game against the Commanders, didn't play a lot of guys, they held opposing teams to 14.5 points per game. That's over half the season. That includes holding the Packers to 7, holding the Lions to 9, holding the Bills to 12. All wins, dominant defensive performances against really good offenses. The Niners are a really good offense too, but they're a flawed offense, and everything is going to be hard for them. This is a team that has struggled to run the ball efficiently as is. Now you're going up against this monstrous defensive line, especially on the interior. There's going to be pressure. Coverage is going to be sticky. You've got a great secondary here. That puts a lot on Brock Purdy. A little too much on Brock Purdy for my liking. Even though I think Brock is good, even though I think he has an ability not just to execute within structure, but also to make some plays outside of it, he is not one of the upper echelon quarterbacks, like in terms of the real elevators. And I think that's kind of what's required to pick apart this Philly defense. Again, maybe if all the weapons are out there and Trent is out there, they can have a more balanced formula, but it's concerning to me how hard it has looked for teams to move the ball on Philly, how hard it was for the Niners to just move the ball on an elite defense, another top 5 defense in Seattle who totally shut them down. But the crazy thing is with Philly, in that stretch where they've been so great defensively, they're 5-0 when holding opponents under 20 points. 0-3 when allowing 20-plus points, though, because we can talk about, this dominant defense. They also had a 3-game slide in there, and it was literally, if their defense didn't wreck the game for the other team, they lost. Because, Logan, this is one of the slogans of Nerd Sesh this year. We said it a million times. The Eagles' offense is bad. And we were saying this in week 1, and now we're saying it after week 18. And I thought, well, maybe it can get better. Maybe it can get better. Hasn't gotten better. 25th in yards per drive, 21st in points per drive. Almost everything you can mention about this offense, save the receivers, is bad. The play calling is awful. Hurts' processing to me is so damaging to this offense. His inability to be decisive, how he holds onto the ball, his pocket presence being very shaky at times, all that stuff has been a problem for them. The run game has mostly been ineffective despite the fact that they have Saquon Barkley. Even the offensive line, which was the strength of this team offensively for so many years, so elite, hasn't been good this year. Now, it looks like Lane Johnson is probably coming back. That is big for this team. He was out as they had some of their roughest performances, but I'm really past any optimism about this Eagles offense. I think we know what they are. They're bad, but their defense is awesome, and the Niners' defense is really bad. So the Niners can absolutely win this game because their offense is very good. Philly's offense is very bad. But San Francisco has one of the absolute worst defenses in the playoff field. I'd probably only take them over Carolina. And with the additional injuries they have now, 0 pass rush, very thin in the secondary, now very thin at linebacker. Shout out to Saleh. Shout out to the coaching. If there's any defense that I can see the Eagles offense actually having a decent day against, this would be at the top of the list in terms of who they'd like to play. And I absolutely think it's possible, and it's probably my expectation, that the Eagles defense plays an elite game to hold a very good offense in check. So I think they skate by. I think it's 21-20. I think it's a little nasty. We're talking about a good Niners offense against a great Eagles defense, and we're talking about a bad Eagles offense against a bad Niners defense. It's going to be a very lopsided game in a lot of ways, but I do think it ends up being a very close one. I am going to trust Philly, though. There's just more talent on the field. And, you know, if the offense ever does strike gold, if we do see them hit on some of those signature go balls and A.J. Brown gets really involved and they're actually running the ball effectively, well, then they'd be a different Eagles team, I guess. You know, if my aunt were a mechanic, she'd be a mechanic, as Mike Tomlin said. But that was in there last year. I don't think it's in there this year. And I am not high on the Eagles. I have them winning this game. I think there are probably some people who will be like, hey, they won the Super Bowl last year. You should be higher on them. And I don't mean to make this comparison to say that these two teams are like similar in terms of their issues, because they're not at all. But I think there were a lot of people who looked at the 2023 Eagles and said, that team was in the Super Bowl last year. That team won 11 games. Why are they not one of the best teams in the NFC? And it's like, well, because they weren't good. I mean, that team was really bad down the stretch. Their defense was a disaster, and there were a lot of coordinator issues. The coaching was bad. I think this team is better because I think this defense is obviously elite, and I don't know. I have less concerns about this offense than I did about this defense, that defense in 2023. I'm concerned about this offense. That defense was just horrible, and they still had offensive issues. So, again, I'm not saying that these two teams are the same. What I am saying is don't just look at the franchise. Don't scout the helmet and say, oh, they were great last year, so they're great again this year. It just hasn't showed for whatever reason. Like, a team usually tells you who they are over 17 games.
Yeah, I mean, if my aunt was a bicycle, she'd be a bicycle.
Right, as Mike Tomlin says. If the 2025 Eagles were the 2024 Eagles, they'd be the 2024 Eagles.
Exactly.
Yeah, but I do think they have enough to get this game against a very flawed 49ers team. Speaking of very flawed, Logan, no, I don't want to do them like that. They just had the most magical win. But your Pittsburgh Steelers are now hosting a playoff game against the Houston Texans. By the skin of their teeth, they escaped and they got in. Can they make any magic happen going, Logan? What does the crystal ball show you for this one?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to pick it to happen. I'm going to take the Texans to win a nasty game, 19-17. Something has got to give. The Steelers have won 23 straight games on Monday Night Football. They also haven't won a playoff game since the Obama administration. The Texans have never won a road playoff game in their franchise's history. So some streak is going to be broken on this game. Another interesting fun fact about the history of some playoff games, Mike Tomlin is now going to be the 14th coach to appear in at least 20 career playoff games. Of those 14 coaches, he has the worst playoff win percentage of any of them, 42.1%. 13th is Minnesota Vikings head coach and legend Bud Grant. In his last 6 playoff games, Mike Tomlin has allowed a whopping 230 points in those 6 playoff games. I think that is the most damning stat about these Steeler teams. That's 38.3 points per playoff game allowed. And that's one of the biggest gripes that Steeler fans always bring up. Great regular season coach. Anytime we get to the playoffs, it seems that we can't scheme for our opponent. That's a very big thing to watch. It doesn't matter if it's Blake Bortles under center or if it's Tom Brady. The Steelers are going to allow some points to get put up. 38.3 in the last 6 playoff games. Also in those last 6 playoff games, it hasn't just been the defense that has let them down. They have lost their last 6 playoff games by an average of 13.6 points per game. That's nearly 2 touchdowns. They have a negative 82-point differential in their last 6 playoff games. So when you look at everything included, the Steelers just haven't shown up. And so I'm not going to bet against that track record. Sure, they don't have the Mason Rudolphs, the Russell Wilsons, the Kenny Pickett's of the world starting. They have Aaron Rodgers. But they are going up against what I think is a top 3 defense in the NFL and the best pass rush in the NFL. The Texans' defense is number 1 in EPA. They are number 1 in EPA per pass. This team is just so dependent on DK Metcalf and their running backs. I just think Houston suffocates this offense. Yeah. Carson, 58.9% of the Steelers' offense came from Jaylen Warren, Kenneth Gainwell, and DK Metcalf, man. They are just so dependent on checkdowns, running the ball, and getting the ball to DK. There is such a significant lack of playmakers outside of those 3 guys. So I wonder how they're going to gimmick up their offense, man. And so there's some other keys that I'll get to for Houston, but look, man, I don't want to say the 2025 Steelers are the 2016 to 2024 Steelers, but I think they've shown us who they are. This is a team that skirts into the playoffs. They barely get in. I mean, in most of those years I'm talking about, the Steelers have had a negative point differential. So,
yeah.
Somebody told me to be optimistic heading into this game. I am going to come into this Houston game with a clear mind and a clear soul, and I'm going to root my heart out for Pittsburgh because that's the happiest I've been in an individual game. I'm going to root for them. I'm going to be optimistic, but my head is telling me that the Texans are just a better team, and they're going to overwhelm the Steelers at the line of scrimmage, and so because of that, I'm going to take the Texans to win a very nasty football game.
Yeah, the Steelers, I don't think are close to the caliber of your typical division winner. We know that. But I also think the Texans are a really damn good wild card team. And this team won 12 games after starting 0-3. They went 12-2 down the stretch with one of the toughest schedules in football this year. And that included wins over the Niners convincingly. They beat the Jags. They were the last team to beat the Jags. They beat the Bills, Colts, Chiefs in succession when the Colts and Chiefs still had their healthy quarterbacks, and specifically shut down those offenses. And at the time, all three of those offenses were top 5 in points per drive. They held them to 19 points for Buffalo, 16 for the Colts, and 10 for the Chiefs. They beat the Chargers in that close game in Week 17 that I just mentioned. Like, their formula of dominant defense and good enough offense has led them to beat a lot of good teams, led them to rack up a lot of wins. And I'm just worried that Aaron Rodgers may die. I'm worried Aaron Rodgers may collapse on the field and die. And if he had collapsed a hero after a go-ahead drive in 60 seconds, a touchdown drive to put his team into the playoffs against the Ravens, that would have been an incredible way to go out. They would have written songs about him. They would have written books about him. If you go out on your ass because you got sacked 5 times by the Texans in a double-digit playoff loss, it's not quite as romantic. And I do feel like that's kind of what's coming. The Texans defense, as you mentioned, Logan, so dominant, number 1 by far in EPA per pass allowed, specifically when they don't blitz. And that's what's maybe most menacing about this team in this matchup. They can just straight up line up and throw straightforward stuff at you and dominate the football game. When you've got the best edge duo who are able to constantly win and get pressure without having to send extra rushers, and you've got the best corner duo in the NFL who are suffocating in coverage, like, you just don't have to get creative. And I think that's where Aaron Rodgers' brain is his superpower at this point, as we talked about. His ability to see through some of the smoke and mirrors other teams might throw at him and identify things pre-snap and just think the game at such a high level. What worries me is the Texans are never going to put you in a spot where it's like, okay, they're rushing 6, so I know that somebody's going to come open quickly. They just don't need to. That's the thing. So when they can just straight up line up and be better than you, I'm like, where is the advantage for the Steelers? Where is Aaron Rodgers going to find success in this football game?
I think there are 2 advantages that Pittsburgh has, and the only thing that I'm clinging to as to why they could win a playoff game. One, it's what you mentioned throughout all year with Houston, and what you specifically mentioned on our last show, the fact that they have settled for so many field goals. Yep. I think that if Pittsburgh can bend and not break and hold them to field goals, that is their advantage, and the fact that Houston has been so anemic at putting the ball in the end zone. Along with that, Houston has been pretty poor at rushing the football throughout this season, and Pittsburgh, when Derek Harmon has been healthy, they've been pretty good at slowing down the rushing attack. They've allowed 91.1 rushing yards per game with Harmon and 166 without Harmon. That's a huge difference to me, and I think they can really slow down that rushing attack. I mean, they have slowed down some really great ones this year. So when I look at this game, I think what you're talking about, Carson, I think this game is going to be decided on the perimeter by the secondaries. That is where this game is going to be won and lost, and that is where I would give Houston a slight advantage, and it's really just because of the depth that we're talking about. Houston, right? And Kamari Lassiter is questionable for this game, so maybe that swings it, but I think he's going to play with Lassiter healthy. I just think there's a massive advantage for Houston there. You're talking about Houston winning one-on-one. We saw that consistently with Baltimore. Baltimore was not afraid of the Pittsburgh receivers. They lined up in man coverage basically every snap. Stingley is going to match up with DK Metcalf basically all game. And on the other side of the ball, Nico Collins is going to match up with Joey Porter Jr. all game. And so that's where I look at the other guys for Houston and Pittsburgh. How routinely are the second through fifth targets winning? That's where I look at, and I hate to do this, Pittsburgh, and this is interrelated with what you're talking about, Houston's not going to have to send those extra rushers. That's where Houston is going to be able to drop their safeties and only rush 4. That's where I think there are going to be some little advantages created for Pittsburgh where Jalen Ramsey is going to be matched up 1v1 against somebody, and that's where Houston's going to have to kill Pittsburgh. Beating, not Porter, because Porter's been excellent. I don't know if you saw this stat. He hasn't allowed a touchdown in over 1,000 coverage snaps. He's been elite this year. That's where Houston is going to have to win against some of the second and third defensive backs, and I think they can do it just because Pittsburgh's depth at that position isn't that great. But I still think it's going to be a close game. That's where I think Pittsburgh has a chance. I still don't like it enough to pick them outright.
I also think the Texans just don't have to put up many points to win this football game. I mean, they've been able to
3 TDs
beat some really good teams.
You get to 20, and I think you beat this team.
I agree, because I really think the Steelers' offense against this defense is so limited, because Rodgers at this stage has to get rid of the ball quickly. But the Texans know that, and they're not going to blitz against her. They're not going to give those opportunities to quickly find a gap in coverage. They're insane in coverage overall, and they're a great tackling team. So it's like if you do find those little checkdowns, get in underneath, I just don't think you're getting the explosive plays from Jaylen Warren and Kenneth Gainwell that you would against an inferior defense. Or forget explosive plays. You know, are you going to routinely get 6 yards out of that?
Yeah, I mean,
I
dude,
just don't
think
think
about
so.
those
I think it's
games.
harder against Houston than anybody else.
I agree. I think you look at one game that Pittsburgh played very recently, and that's the game against Cleveland, where they read all of those little dump downs to Gainwell and Warren. Yeah. And I already read out those numbers. The Steelers are so dependent on 3 players that I just think it's going to allow Houston's defense to really hone in on those guys. And then you're talking about, all right, and I love these guys, but you're then going, all right, we need Pat Freiermuth to step up and win. We need Jonnu Smith to step up and win. We need Calvin Austin to step up and win. And it's like, okay, those guys can win against the Ravens. Mm-hmm. We saw it against a defense like Cleveland. I think Houston has even better personnel, and I just don't think it's going to be enough.
I totally agree. They know that Rodgers is going to be looking to be a check down merchant all day long, and I think they're going to be all over that. And when they can get him to hold that ball at all, when they can get him under duress, that feels like game over. Rodgers, God bless him, dude, what he's done. I thought it was such an amazing moment. Like I said, a legacy moment last week. What a game he played, especially in the clutch. But this year, he is 31st in EPA per dropback under pressure. He is 27th in EPA per dropback when he holds the ball for 2.5 seconds. So when they get in the backfield, and if they can force him to hold that ball, he just doesn't have the playmaking ability, obviously, whatsoever at this stage. And as you said, the Steelers don't have the weapons outside of DK Metcalf. So it's good DK's back out there. He gives them more of a chance. I just think the Texans' defense is going to completely overwhelm the Steelers, especially in terms of the passing game. How do the Steelers win, though? I think you laid out a couple of the keys. They need red zone stops. And that is possible against a team that is ranked 30th in red zone offense, against a team that kicked more field goals than any other team in NFL history this year, but was only tied 25th in offensive touchdowns. That's the Texans. That's been their problem. And we'll see if they can overcome that in a run. So you got to hold them to field goals when they do have good drives. I think whenever you look at an upset, it's easy to say, oh, they need a turnover. They need a big defensive play. I think that's especially true with an offense as limited as Pittsburgh's, though. And I think that they need Cam Hayward, TJ, and Herbig, Highsmith, like the totality of this pass rush to cause some problems versus this Texans offensive line, which is really not good. And they probably need that pressure to lead CJ to give them one. And I think CJ's really good. He did have a couple of pretty bad mistakes in that Chargers game 2 weeks ago against a very good defense. If the Steelers want to win, they need that to go right for them. And when you talk about absolutely on the perimeter, winning one-on-one, they need DK to somehow break one against this secondary. If it's Stingley or Lassiter, that's as tough as it gets. I do think as good as DK is as a receiver, those guys are better as corners. Like, Houston is a very flawed football team, but in spite of their flaws, they've been able to rack up all these wins, all these quality wins, because they are truly exceptional on one side of the ball, and they have the better quarterback. I look at Pittsburgh. I see a lot more mediocrity. So I'm going to take the Texans to win this game 20-10. I think it's certainly going to be ugly. I think it's going to be uglier on the Pittsburgh side, though, by a decent amount. I don't think either team is putting up points, though. So whatever the under is, I'd take it. Maybe Houston could. They could hit on a couple of shot plays, but I don't see that happening. And that's going to be what determines the ceiling for this Texans team. Not in this game, but down the line more so. Can they put up enough points to make a deep run? Last wild card game, Rams-Panthers, Logan. The rematch, the most anticipated. What's going to happen this time around?
Look, I know the Panthers won this one earlier in the year, and it's rare that you get a rematch from the regular season that isn't an in-division battle, but Matt Stafford had 3 debilitating turnovers in that game, and they lost by 3. Like, it's pretty simple to me. I think the Panthers are clearly the worst team in the playoff field, and
yeah, it's not even close.
Barring Matt Stafford shitting his pants again, I think the Rams just roll over Carolina. I hate being like this, but this is a no-brainer to me. I didn't even write down a score prediction. I just wrote Rams. Also, Rams just activated Quentin Lake. He should be back for the playoffs. I don't know if he's going to be back for this game, but I think they're trying to ramp him up and have him ready for this one. So that's a big deal to me, too, just in terms of their ability to go on a long run. Their secondary is really the only concern I've had about them, and they've been without Lake for a while. So they get him back. That's a big deal to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just think Carolina's worse in the playoff field. I would say Rams win this one 34-24.
Ooh, damn. I thought maybe we were going to be synced up. I have this 34-14 for the Rams. I think it's a total beatdown. I think you got to pick one beatdown every wild card weekend, and this is the one. Obviously, it's by far the biggest gap on paper. How did Carolina win the first meeting? Largely because of what you said, 3 Stafford turnovers, including a pick 6. But they did also run the ball really well. And they were efficient in the passing game, and they attacked this secondary a bit that we've talked about being the one vulnerability on this Rams team, if there is one. And it was just clearly the best game that the Panthers played all year, like really in all phases. They played a really good football game. But, as you mentioned, Quentin Lake was out for that game. Now he's coming back. That's a meaningful difference. And honestly, to keep it simple, I just don't think the Panthers can replicate that performance. In the 4 weeks since that game, they're averaging 16 points and 245 yards per game. Horrible offense. Their run game has just not been the same. That's what they really got going midway through the season when they racked up some wins. And I think teams are very much keying in on the run now. And so they haven't been as productive there. And I trust Bryce Young against this pass rush 0%. Bryce has his good moments, but I think when you do have the ability to get home with 4, like this team can, one of the best pass rushes in the NFL, that really scares me that he could get physically overwhelmed. And it just happened 2 weeks ago against Seattle. Carolina as a team got eaten alive in that game, especially in the second half. And I just think it could look something like that again. And also the Panthers offense is just bad, 26th in points per drive this year. And also their defense is bad. They're 28th in yards allowed per drive. They're 24th in points allowed per drive. They're bad versus the run. They're bad versus the pass. I don't want to rain on Panthers fans' parade. Matthew Sponhauer, I saw talk about this. It's the greatest thing that's happened to him in his pro sports freaking life. Poor guy. He's got a sad existence. But for a lot of people of North Carolina sports fandom, this is the best it's been in a while. And I think that's why there's so much pent-up rage when I said that I didn't like Eric Collins calling NFL games. And everybody lost their minds. It's probably the least popular take I've ever had, Logan. But regardless of that, we'll put our differences aside on that. And I think we can agree, maybe not with Panthers fans, but with the world, that the Panthers are like one of the worst football teams ever. I mean, they're 25th in DVOA. They have the 4th worst point differential ever
to make the playoffs,
by a playoff team. Yeah, they just don't belong. They just don't belong. So I look at the Rams, and they couldn't belong anymore. I mean, they don't belong in Wild Card Weekend. It feels like they're so good they should have a bye. I'm not saying that they deserve it over Seattle because they absolutely don't, but I just think Stafford is not going to have a catastrophic game like that again. Devontae's back out there, and that's big for this whole playoff run because don't forget, they were 11-3 with Devontae. 2 of their losses came in 3 games without him. So I just think the Rams are going to be able to get it however they want versus this defense. On the ground, passing to anyone. Puka can dominate. Devontae can dominate. The tight ends can dominate out of 12 personnel. It's all on the menu. Nothing would surprise me other then the Rams not really controlling this game. I just think they're the most stacked team in football. The Panthers are by far the worst in the playoff field, and what we saw in the regular season was a fluke that is not going to be replicated whatsoever. So now, Logan, like I said, we'll breeze through these games because we're in theoretical land, but we got to get our Super Bowl predictions down on paper. We're into the divisional round now. You and I have different matchups. What's your prediction for your AFC games in the divisional round?
So I will start with New England and Houston. I have Houston traveling to New England. I'm actually going to take the Patriots to win this one. I just think they're a more complete team. I know the Texans' defense has been overwhelming. This is a Drake Maye bet. I think Maye is one of the best quarterbacks in the playoff field. I think if these teams battled, I just trust Maye to get it done. I think it'd be a grimy game, a little bit more low scoring than Patriots games have been, something like 24-20. But I would take the Patriots, and then Denver would get my number 1 seed. Buffalo would travel to them. I think Buffalo beats Denver's ass.
Ooh, I love
like
that.
20. I'd say I'll put a little bit of respect on Denver's defense. I don't think they crack 30, but I think Josh does some damage. I'd say 27-17.
Wow, Logan, look at you. Look at you. You know, we've had our spats about the Bills this year. It hasn't translated to the bedroom, if anybody was wondering.
The boner went flaccid.
Yeah, he did. He did. He's definitely having some issues in the bedroom, metaphorically. But I have the Bills traveling to play the Texans. I actually have a wild card matchup here in the divisional round. I'm going to take the Bills to win this one. The Texans beat them the first time around, and the Texans are really scary. And that's what I want to make clear. And I've tried to make clear, as I have been generally a Bills optimist all year. As I have said, I would probably take their formula in this flawed AFC over everybody else. Never has that been by a convincing margin. Never has that been, oh my God, clearly the Bills are the best team just because they have Josh Allen. No. They are deeply flawed in a lot of other ways, and there are other AFC teams that are deeply flawed in their own ways, but also have their other exceptional things. Of course, it is possible for the Texans defense to have a totally dominant performance and CJ plays really well and they beat the Bills. Like, all these games are damn near toss-ups for me. Certainly the Jags game was. However, I do think even though Houston got the first one, if the Bills can just avoid the disaster scenario that was the first meeting, 8 sacks, offensive line getting destroyed, brutal receiver performance with Kincaid not out there, Josh not playing well, like, obviously, the Texans defense always makes life hard, but if the O-line holds up to a reasonable level as an elite offensive line, and with Kincaid out there, who, again, has made this offense so much better when he is on the field, I think that means the Bills' offense will be able to put up enough points. And the defense can hold their own in this matchup against a team that doesn't run the ball well, with a good pass defense, against a team that has settled so much for field goals. I would take Buffalo if it came to a rematch. And then I have Chargers-Broncos. So I have an AFC West battle. I'm going to take Denver to advance. This is interesting, though. This is very interesting because the Chargers have gotten more pressure on the Broncos than any other team has. Bo Nix's 2 most pressured games, both against the Chargers. They beat the Broncos early in the year when Herbert played, and he pushed the ball for 300 yards on them. And obviously, Herbert and a number of key starters sat in this Week 18 game because it was meaningless for them. But over the 2 games which Bo Nix played in its entirety, he had under 300 passing yards total, 6 yards per attempt. The Boner, who has had his flaccid performances really bad against the Chargers, really bad. So I worry so much about the Chargers' offensive line facing this defense, a defense that hasn't played their best recently, but my God, I mean, the combination of pass rush and secondary they have, they're a menacing defense. The Chargers won the first game when Herbert was on the field, of course, but Joe Alt was also on the field for that game, and I do think that makes a difference. So I will go with a more talented team. I will take the Broncos to advance to the AFC title game, but Herbert being great and this defense stifling Bo, that could definitely happen. That could definitely move me. I could flip on this by next week when we do our predictions for the divisional round if this matchup ends up taking place. Like, it's just so much on Herbert's plate. That's the thing. I can talk myself into, okay, one Herbert hero game against the Pats. Can he do it over and over again? We talk about, hey, so much faith in Josh. There's more on Herbert's plate than anybody else. There is more on Herbert's plate than Josh's, so it's just a tough formula for me to see them sustaining that many times over. But I don't know. The Broncos are flawed, and the Chargers did have their number. I mean, it was one game, but when Herbert played. They beat him. Okay, let's go to the NFC, Logan, divisional round. What are your predictions?
I've got the low seed Niners, the 6 seed, traveling to Seattle. This is where I just think the Niners are a little bit outmatched. I think Seattle's the more complete team. They've got the bye. They're going to be at home. And, I mean, we just saw Seattle control that game against them in the final week of the season, and then setting up a division matchup in the conference title game. I'm going to have the Rams take down the Chicago Bears in a rematch of one of the games of the year. This is, again, where I see the Bears just being outmanned a little bit. Rams, I think, are one of the best teams in football, and I can see Caleb getting a game, barring Caleb playing like the best game of his career. You know, again, there's just a consistency level where, like, I could see the Bears dropping round 1 against Green Bay. I'm very close on that one. It's hard for me to imagine Caleb, like, really putting it together to get them to the conference title game in year 1. And again, the Rams are just way more talented. So
Yeah.
I'm going to set up the third game of the season between LA and Seattle in the NFC title game.
You and me both, my friend. I think these are kind of clearings in my two matchups. I have the Packers going to Seattle. That's easily the Seahawks for me. If Micah were out there, if Tucker Kraft were out there, it'd be a different conversation. But I just think this Seahawks defense is absolutely nuts, and the offense is good enough. Now, the Seahawks are not invulnerable because the offense has been pretty average for half the season now. We've talked about Darnold not playing at the same level and having some more turnovers and down performances, but still, the totality of what they put together this year, 14 wins against a brutal schedule, number 1 in DVOA, number 1 in point differential, and like we've said, even when the offense has been ugly, they've mostly found a way to win because the defense is that great, and the Packers just don't have all their horses out there. So I'll take Seattle, and then I'll take the Rams definitely to beat the Eagles. I know that the Eagles got the first one, and maybe Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis, they can conjure up some more special teams magic, but I thought even in that game the Rams were the better team, and the offensive gap between these two teams. Like, I would say the Eagles are the marginally better defense because they're just so airtight there, whereas I do have some questions about the Rams secondary. But when I think about the Rams still being a very good defense, the Rams still being an elite pass rush and a good run defense, and overall, the Rams finished this year ranked 6th in points allowed per drive. And then we're talking about the number 1 offense, clearly the most stacked offense, elite in literally every way: run game, play calling, quarterback play, offensive line, receivers. Even the tight ends get utilized in such a great way. Yeah, I don't know. I just don't see any reason to believe that the Eagles will be able to keep up in a potential shootout like that, because I think the Rams drop points on anybody. So we're in the championship round, Logan. AFC, you've got Bills-Patriots. Holy division rival. You've got 2 division rivalry
I
games.
do, man.
That would be awesome.
Right?
Who's going to the Super Bowl out of the AFC, Logan?
I'm taking Buffalo. I'm going to
Oh,
Josh
let's
Allen to get it
fucking
done against
go!
New England.
After all this.
After all that,
After
yeah,
all
man.
that.
after
We end
all
up
of
on
our
the same
after
side
all
of the
of our
casting couch.
beef throughout the regular season, yes.
It makes my heart sing. It makes my heart sing. Even though nothing has actually happened, Logan, the Bills could lose to the Jags, and I would just feel happier knowing that you were on our side as it happened.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I just have more faith in Josh Allen than any other quarterback in the playoff field, and I think about the logic that I've had routinely over the last 3 years. And I want to be clear about something. Not every year has been a faith in Patrick Mahomes bet. 2 of them have been. The 2 years ago when they went to the Super Bowl, it was a team bet. 2 years it was a Pat bet. Last year it was a team bet. I think New England is probably still the better team, but like Josh Allen has just shown me time and time again that when the chips are down, he delivers every single time. And so I'm betting on Josh Allen delivering again. I'm going to take Buffalo to get to the Super Bowl.
Logan, I love that take out of you. And by the way, I just brought up these numbers. I know we went into this in depth earlier, but when you talk about him delivering every time, the consistency, I do just want to mention not just the bottom line numbers, but in losses in the playoffs since 2020, Josh Allen averages 320 total yards per game, has 12 touchdowns, and 2 turnovers. That's elite production. So again, when things have gone wrong, big picture, Josh has put up these incredible numbers even in the losses. And that's not to say that he's been perfect every time. That's not to say that he's outplayed Mahomes every time. He hasn't. I thought last year Mahomes was a little bit better than him. But if the only thing that you can say to make it seem like Josh is in any way responsible for these losses or letting his team down, if the only thing you can hold against him is that he hasn't every time outplayed the quarterback at the highest peak in NFL history, well, that's just ridiculous. And it does speak to how monumentally great a player Josh is. His performances are not lesser because of his defense's failures. So that's just the big picture point here. Again, if anybody else put up these numbers in wins or losses, you would say, oh my God, how incredible, because they are. Because overall, Josh has been great in the losses, and he's been great in the wins. And I'm going to take him in the Buffalo Bills to beat the Denver Broncos. This would be a fun one for the narratives, wouldn't it? Josh versus the Boner and the Broncos. That would be very interesting. I think the Broncos are a really good team. Their defense just hasn't been as dominant in recent weeks as it was earlier in the year. You look at the Packers game and the Jags game, a couple of good offenses that were able to really move the ball on them more comfortably than we'd seen earlier in the year. And obviously, I still think they're a really, really good defense, but they don't inspire as much fear in me as the Texans do at this point. I even said last week I would take the Seahawks defense over them. But really, the difference here is I just don't trust Bo and the offense. Denver ends the year 18th in yards per drive, 19th in points per drive. I think it's really fucking hard to make it to a Super Bowl when your offense is that limited and that inconsistent, and I have those sort of questions about your quarterback play. And Dan Orlovsky can go out there and say, oh, Bo, look at how he executes in the clutch. Man, you shouldn't have to be having one fucking drive against all these shitty teams where things finally go right after your defense and your offensive line and your coaching kept you in a game up until that point. And I just don't believe in the Broncos offense. I do not believe. I will trust the Bills' offensive formula with Kincaid on the field to beat that team. And so I do have them going to the Super Bowl. What about in the NFC, Logan? The real heavyweight battle.
I'm taking Seattle.
Wow.
I'm scared betting on Sam Darnold to go on a playoff run. Admittedly, I am absolutely terrified that at the drop of a hat when you need Sam Darnold, he could crap his pants and the Seattle offense could fall apart, but I think they're the better team. I've seen it with the Rams. I've seen how dominant they have been with the red zone, with Devontae Adams, with Puka. I definitely believe in their offense more, but I think the totality of the Seattle team is just better. I think that this defense is monstrous. I think they're great at all three levels, and I don't know, man. This was the toughest game to pick. I really hope this is what we get in the NFC Championship game, though, man. I think this would be an all-time classic, and I'm just marginally going to favor Seattle. I think this is a barn burner again, though, man. I think it could be game of the year like we got in the last time these two teams faced off.
And even the first one, I mean, despite Sammy D throwing 4 picks, that was still a banger of a game, and the Seahawks had a chance. They played 2 incredibly even football games separated by a total of 1 point. I am going to take the Rams, though. I think both teams are great. There is just still a difference in terms of my faith in these two offenses. Like I said, I think the Rams are the best offense in football. I think they're one of the most talented, most stacked all-around offenses in the NFL. Seattle finishes the year just 11th in points per drive, 11th in yards per drive, which, again, it's above average, but there's been a lot more questionable performances from Darnold down the stretch, really over about half the season now. Can I see Seattle winning this game? Of course. Can I pick it, though? I can't, just because I feel like the consistency that I'm getting from the Rams is just more significant, and I am ultimately going to lean on great offense over great defense, especially when I think the Rams defense in their own right is really good. And I understand, look, the Rams had a bad loss to the Falcons. The Seahawks didn't really have a game like that this year. I mean, the Seahawks took care of business. They are an incredibly impressive football team, but I'm going to go on the team that I feel is ultimately the most complete, the quarterback, the offense, who I trust more in this matchup, and that is Matt Stafford, and most importantly, just the totality of what the Los Angeles Rams have. Which brings us to the Super Bowl, Logan. We've both got the Bills there. You've got the Seahawks. Who's hoisting the Lombardi?
I believe Josh Allen has one stadium that he has not played in just yet, and it's Levi's. And
Are you out of your goddamn mind?
I'm going to take the Bills to win the Super Bowl.
Wow. So this was all just a heel turn earlier in the year. It was a long con. You were setting up an arc
face turn.
for the ultimate face turn. I mean, I'd kiss your feet right now if I could. This is incredible.
I'm betting on Josh Allen.
You're putting too much on him. This is too much pressure and too much expectation.
I'm putting all the chips in on the center of the table, and I am betting on Josh Allen to get it done. I do think I think a lot of what we said is true. This is going to be aged so freezing cold if the Jags beat that ass round one, but
which totally could happen.
It's very possible. Like you mentioned when we were previewing that game, I do think this is the worst group around Josh Allen. And that being said, I think this is the most open the AFC has been in his playoff career, considering the circumstances. And I just trust Josh to deliver. This is the ultimate faith in Josh Allen bet. I've made this bet before. I have taken the Bills to win the Super Bowl. I've gotten burnt. I think this is the year, man. I just have this embedded faith in Josh, and I think that the door is open. The foot injury also scares me, too. I can't lie. Like, I think that they need to limit hits on him and his lower body as we go through the playoffs because it could flip on its head. You know, I mean, he takes a bad shot in round one. Even if they win, that could flip how he plays. So this is the least amount of confidence I've ever had in a Super Bowl pick. Just because this is the most open I feel like the NFL has ever been in the playoffs since we started the show. But I'm taking the Bills to do it. I'm going to say the Bills beat Seattle in the Super Bowl 27-23.
Wow. I am gobsmacked, Logan. I'm damn near speechless.
Are you aroused?
I am, but I'm also nervous because I don't think the Bills are going to win the Super Bowl this year. I agree with you when you say it's the most open the AFC has been. I also still think if they get there, it's going to be damn impressive, bro. They're going to have to win 3 road games. They're going to have to beat 3 damn good football teams. Josh is going to have to play exceptionally.
So is LA.
That's true. But LA gets to start with the Panthers. You know, the difference between Wild Card Weekend being against the Panthers, who are the worst playoff team, and the Jags, who have been the hottest team in football for a long stretch. That's a big difference. But you're right. Either way, it's going to be a road path, a wild card team, and I do think they're both good enough to justify that. I will say, though, the path may be open in the AFC. I do think there is one team that is something of a stalwart, and maybe I can't call them a juggernaut, but that does stand above the rest to me at their best, and that's the Rams. Again, they lost the 1 seed. They lost a key game to Seattle, and maybe some people are a little lower on them because of that, but I've been saying since midseason, I just don't see a better team in football, and so I think Josh could play a hell of a game. He's going to be facing a damn good defense, a great pass rush, and it's going to be the best, most complete offense in football opposite him, the Rams, who can rip you apart however they want, who aren't dependent on any one superhero, who are A+ in so many different areas, going up against a defense that is flawed. I like the Bills' pass defense. They're playing well. I don't know, man. Puka and Devontae with the corners that we have, who, again, Trey White, God bless him for coming back, but that's a mismatch. The run game is flat out a mismatch. They're better coached, and Josh may be better than Matt Stafford, but that's not ultimately what football is about. A Josh Allen faith bet can get me so far, can't get me all the way when I just look at the Rams and I'm just like, yeah, they're a better football team, and it's pretty clear. So if I'll give a score prediction, I'll say 35-27. I think this would be a shootout. I think overall the two great offenses would mostly win out, but it's just harder for me to see the Bills defense, as flawed as they are, getting a stop on the Rams offense as pretty much flawless as they are, because even though the Bills offense is great, and especially with Kincaid on the field, they don't have playmakers everywhere that like the Rams do. Like, it's just different. I'm just really high on the Rams, and maybe they lose to the Panthers. We mentioned the stat. 3 teams worse than the Panthers in terms of point differential have made the playoffs. All of them won a playoff game. Maybe there's just a little bit of voodoo magic there. Maybe Bryce's whimsy carries them through. However, I would be shocked, and I would probably be open to cock and ball torture on the podcast if the Rams lose to the Panthers. And I am confident in picking them to go to the Super Bowl and winning the Super Bowl. As confident as you could be in any team this year, I do continue to view them as the number one, the best. And if the Bills played Seattle, I would take Seattle too. But I would be like, okay, Maybe we get a down game from Sammy D, and that's the path thin. And maybe they aren't efficient running the ball. When it comes to the Rams, I'm just like, that's a machine that can really hum on all cylinders in a crazy way. So there you have it, folks. Our Super Bowl predictions. Logan, I'm just looking into your eyes so lovingly right now. And it's really, really nice that you landed on this place. We had probably our most heated debate ever, with me defending the Bills up against the Patriots and the Broncos and the Texans of world and saying I'd still take them, even though it's really close. And you ended up being higher on the Bills than me. How about that? We'll see. Anything can happen this wild card weekend, again, except for the Panthers beating the Rams, in which case I will get my cock and balls tortured on the podcast. But what happened that was crazy in the NFL over the last couple of days is a number of head coach firings. We already talked about Raheem Morris because the Falcons canned him on Sunday, so we got to touch on that on our Week 18 reaction show. Let's start with the big one that broke as we're recording, Logan. John Harbaugh is out. He is out after, what has it been, 17 years? With
I think 08 or 07 he came
I believe
in
it was
after
08.
Yeah.
So that is 18 years as head coach of the Baltimore Ravens. He's done after they missed the playoffs on the last play of their season. We've talked about this potentially looming. What is your reaction now that it's happened?
I'm wondering if there's more credence to some of these Lamar Harbaugh beef stories. I don't know. You know, those kind of had an uptick towards the end of the season, and Lamar in the press conference immediately after the game, they asked him, you know, do you want Harbaugh to return as coach? And he was like, man, I'm not even thinking about that. Like, if he really had Harbaugh's back, you got to feel like Lamar would have resoundingly answered and been like, that's my guy. So
yeah,
it really makes me wonder. That being said, I don't really think this was the right decision. I don't know if Harbaugh was the real issue. I know you made a point. You're like, what does Harbaugh really do? But it's like, I don't know, man. If I'm going to let a guy go, it's going to be Monken or both of them. Like,
I think it's probably going to be all of them now.
Well, now it's going to be all of them, right? I think they're cleaning house. I think they are restarting. They're going to find a new offensive mind, I guess, that they think can really max out Lamar. I just think a lot of things went badly for Baltimore this year. Matabike gets injured. Kyle Hamilton gets injured in this last game against Pittsburgh. If Tyler Loop makes this field goal, does John Harbaugh get fired? Like, I just wonder about a lot of the ripple effects of some of these plays and some of these injuries that really affect the outcome of this season. I guess Lamar just wants a fresh turn, and so does Baltimore. I don't know. As an outsider looking in, Harbaugh wouldn't have been the guy that I let go. I would have let go. And the reason I say this is I just don't look at there being a clear-cut coaching candidate that's a cut above John Harbaugh that's available. I guess my guy would be Brian Flores for Baltimore. Because I think when I think about the identity of this franchise and, you know, what do I think of when I think of Baltimore? I think of rock-solid defense. I think of smash-mouth, nasty football, and I think Flores kind of embodies that. But does he maximize Lamar? I don't know, man. It's a weird impasse that I was not expecting Baltimore to be facing immediately after this season. I'm kind of shocked that Harbaugh got fired.
I'm good with it because my take is when you have an all-time great quarterback, if you feel like your coach is mediocre, just okay, that guy can effectively be holding you back because you should be striving for greatness in all phases of a franchise. You need to maximize the window you have with this great quarterback.
Is Harbaugh the reason that they came up short in the playoffs?
No. And I've said that when we've talked about this before. The reason they've come short in the playoffs is their offense, and a lot of that is on Lamar. When I talk about, for the most part, great quarterbacks take too much blame when it comes to their team's shortcomings because great quarterbacks are great. Lamar has had some rough playoff showings, and so that's not necessarily true for him. He has had a number of playoff games that are on him, and his playoff career is only 13 total touchdowns to 11 turnovers. His passer rating's under 85. Like, he has not been nearly the player that he is in the regular season. And the Ravens' defenses have allowed only 18 points per game in the playoffs. So there's no question their playoff losses are more so on their best player not being his best and their offense not being good enough, which is not Harbaugh's side of the ball. But when I look at this season, I don't think Harbaugh is doing anything to elevate this team, which is what I want from my head coach of a great team. And more so, I do think some of the things that we consider him as responsible for are not going right. If he is your program builder, your culture guy, the guy who brings that Ravens identity, which was so consistent for this team for a couple of decades, it didn't feel like they had that this year. This didn't feel like a team that was well coached, motivated, connected. There's been so many weird, bad press conference moments from this team, and that happens when you're struggling. It's happened a lot with the Ravens. That's early in the season. I do think that speaks to a bit of a disconnect between the coaching and the players. And then I look at another one of his key responsibilities. Okay, if you're not the play caller, if you're not the mind behind the X's and O's of this football team, you're hiring coordinators. You're responsible for bringing in those guys. I don't like Monken, and I really don't like Zach Orr. So he hasn't done his job well there. So it's like, are you just giving him tenure? Is it just because he was a really good coach who was there for some great teams, he's got to be there forever? I would move with urgency when I have a Lamar Jackson. It's like, look, I get it. A lot of people from afar look at the Bills and they're like, you want to fire Sean McDermott? You win 11, 12, 13 games every year. Not because of Sean McDermott, though. The standards are different when the quarterback is at a different level. And so I'm good with this. I am. I'm interested in seeing who they go for. I agree with you. I think Brian Flores is the best because I think what they really need is a great defensive mind. I think Lamar takes care of a lot of the offensive stuff, but obviously you still need a play caller. And I didn't like Monken, and I didn't really like Roman, and Brian Flores is just a really smart guy. I think he got screwed so hard with his last head coaching job. And I'm just looking forward to seeing him get another crack at it. He's been around a great offensive mind with KOC in Minnesota, so you would think he knows the kind of guys to bring with him. And yeah, I'd feel very good about building a team around that guy. And I think maybe they just need a new voice too. Sometimes when you feel like you keep hitting your head on the ceiling and you keep falling just short, you just need somebody new. You just need to feel like you're changing direction. And so for all those reasons, I totally get this decision. I do.
And Harbaugh does bear responsibility for the final play, like with Loop a little bit. Like the fact that he didn't burn a timeout and keep that a 39, 40-yard field goal, that does make a little bit of a difference in potentially
you're talking about
that game.
Them centering it and going back 3-4 yards, taking the knee. Yeah, it's true. It made a difference for a rookie kicker with everything on the line. So,
but I don't know. Maybe I'll be wrong. Like maybe they can find the guy. I agree with you though on Lamar. Like you were never going to choose Harbaugh over Lamar, and that's the exact right decision. He's one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play this game. Find the guy that meshes with him, and see if you can open up a new ceiling for Baltimore.
You always reach that point when you just reach this level of frustration. It's inevitable, and I do think it's justified. I don't think that John Harbaugh is getting screwed here. So let's talk about some of the other ones that were maybe a bit more predictable, a bit more obvious. Although actually there's one more that does surprise me in the AFC North. We'll get to that first before we talk about old man Pete being sent back to the retirement home, which everybody knew was coming like 8 weeks into the season. Kevin Stefanski is out in Cleveland. Is this the right decision?
I've heard murmurings about this for a little bit now. I don't. I think that the front office completely fucked Kevin Stefanski by trading and acquiring Deshaun Watson. Like, I think Stefanski was going to be the guy. He has been so good at getting this defense to work, and I think it's a personnel thing with Cleveland more than anything else. I think the offensive line regressed massively over the past 2 years, and that's the biggest quarterback play and offensive line play, and it has completely tanked the offensive production. Just offense in general. To me, I look at Stefanski, I go Stefanski and Schwartz are most responsible for the defense, and the defense has been reliably elite for 3 years. If I was going to make an adjustment, I would try to crush it in the draft, crush in free agency, which admittedly the Browns have done. They did last year. I thought they crushed the draft, fire your offensive coordinator, get a new offensive mind in there.
Well, Stefanski is a huge part of the offense. I mean, he's an offensive guy.
No doubt, but it's like, I don't know if you could put any offensive coordinator with this team and you'd figure it out. I think you're just screwed. So I liked Stefanski. I liked that he was a stabilizing force for a team that fires their coach every 2 to 3 seasons, and it's like, yippee. It's like the Jets firing Robert Saleh. Now you're just restarting, and you're probably going to go back to the gutter, and you're probably going to trade Myles Garrett. It's just another reset, and I feel bad for the Browns. I think they're launching a full-fledged just rebuild and restarting point.
Yeah, I wouldn't have done this either. I think Stefanski is good, and he has not been their primary play caller for the last couple years. He has handed that off, I think, midseason both times to the OCs. But if you go back and look at, like, 2023, he was calling plays, and he's always been involved in the offense. But I think he's a pretty damn good offensive mind, and I think the level of production they were able to get out of Joe Flacco at that stage and the fact that they were a passable offense in 2023 when they went through this insane number of starting quarterbacks. I mean, Jeff Driscoll and DTR and PJ Walker and he who shall not be named. And then it's like, with Flacco, they can make a stretch run and get to the playoffs. And I understand that things fizzled out with Baker ultimately, but the production he was getting out of him, like in that 2020 season when they made the playoffs too, he's a 2-time coach of the year. And he got that award both times that he got the Browns to the playoffs, because that's a hell of an achievement, dude. Other than that, the Browns hadn't been to the playoffs since 2002. And he got them a playoff win. Like, I just think Stefanski's a good coach. I don't think he's gotten worse. I just think he's been given like the most incomprehensibly bad quarterback play and offensive personnel in the NFL. And like you said, I don't think anybody's salvaging this situation. I know you famously once said that Shedeur makes you get up out of your seat and say, yeah, and that's why you had him ranked a little higher than the rest of us. And, well, I can't recreate it. It was special the way you did it. But Shedeur was awful this year. Like, let's just be real. I'm not saying he's the problem, but the turnovers are just
had 40,
brutal.
And this is partly because he holds on to the ball so long. Shedeur had a pressure rate of over 40% this season when he's played. That's the highest number I've ever seen for any quarterback. And so I think that speaks to two things. One, Shedeur needs to get rid of the ball faster. Also, they put him behind the worst offensive line in the NFL. Like, I just don't – like, the only guy who could have maybe won 7 to 8 games over the last 2 years with Cleveland is Mike Tomlin. And that's because he has some sort of voodoo magic that he breaks against every team that he plays. Like – I like Stefanski. I wouldn't have fired him. I don't really think it's his fault that Cleveland is. I think the front office, and more specifically, let's just point fingers, Haslam fucked him. Haslam wanted Deshaun Watson. Haslam gave him the worst contract in NFL history, all that guaranteed money. Like, that's where I have sympathy for Stefanski. When you tie up $50 million in the worst quarterback in the NFL, not only does it handicap what you can do with the rest of your roster, you have to play with rookie quarterbacks. You can't, like, it's just...
Totally.
I think Stefanski got boned.
On the Shedeur point, I'm not saying that he is going to suck, but he sucked this year. And I agree with you, the offensive line is bad. But the pressure rate thing, we can't throw out pressure rate numbers. And you mentioned this. I'm not saying this to you. I'm saying this to people. You get pressured more the longer you hold the football. Shedeur held the football longer than any other quarterback. It was the longest. It was over 3.2 seconds.
Oh, really? I thought it was 2 point... I guess the advanced numbers from Pro Football Reference might be a little bit different. For me, it was 2.7, but that was pocket time. Second.
Yeah, no, that's different.
Okay.
NFL Next Gen Stats is what really tracks time to throw, and he's over 3.2 seconds. It's the longest in the NFL. So that is obviously going to increase your pressure rate, and I think a lot of that is on Shedeur. And I think some of the bust plays, right, like Theo was talking about, when Theo had him ranked last among all quarterbacks, he had more of those brutal turnover moments on a per-play basis that set his team back. So, again, I'm not saying, oh, everything is Shedeur fault. Shedeur is going to suck. What I am saying is, when you throw in a 5th-round rookie quarterback to this offensive situation, yeah, the results are going to be bad, just like they were when you threw a 3rd-round rookie quarterback into this situation this same year with Dylan Gabriel, or when you go into a year and it's like, is Deshaun Watson, who is the most watched quarterback ever, or Jameis Winston going to be our starter this year? And are we going to have a couple DTR games? Like, this has been the quarterback situation for the Browns every year. So, yeah, I just don't think it's been a winnable, salvageable situation. And I agree with you. It's a front office issue. It's an ownership issue. It's a personnel issue. It's not a Stefanski issue. I think he's going to get swooped up by someone new, and I think that's going to be a good hire for them. In terms of a replacement, I think
Flores.
We're going to mostly think of the same guys. Yeah, Brian Flores.
I look at him.
Some of the offensive play callers. Clint Kubiak, I think, is really good.
I wouldn't want to take this Browns fucking job.
Yeah, you're probably
right. This is
right.
the worst. At least the Raiders have the number 1 pick. You know what I mean? The Browns.
Yeah.
I mean, the Browns have those picks for the future. I guess that's what you look forward to. Like, but
if they trade Myles Garrett and they get 3 more first-round picks, then it makes it look excited. And they just had a great rookie draft class, so that's where we have to give credit to.
For Cleveland, I was hoping that you could somehow snake Mike McDaniel or something like that if he had gotten fired, and like then you go, hey Mike, we got all these picks, you throw your dart at the board, take the offensive guys you want out of college, let's build this thing up. But get a guy who is going to be dug in for the long term and for your new era. I mean, this is a completely new era for Cleveland. Like, they're likely going to deal Miles. I don't have any backing like from Cleveland to do that, but they're going to a new stadium, a new coach. They've got all these first round picks. It is a full-fledged restart for Cleveland.
Yeah, and this might end up being great for Stefanski. It sucks to get fired from a head coaching job, but
it's probably going to go
I think
upward.
everybody knows what he's capable of. He's proven. Again, he's a 2-time coach of the year who got fired.
I mean, Baltimore.
And he's still young.
I would maybe entertain Stefanski. He's not a bad coach.
No, I agree. Yeah, I think that the light at the end of the tunnel for him is I don't have to be associated with the Browns
100p.
anymore. That's something. For the Raiders, the light at the end of the tunnel is we can end the Pete Carroll era, which was a complete and utter disaster, although he was hyped when they beat the Chiefs in Week 18. I think he thought maybe they had won the Super Bowl.
Good for
What's
Pete.
next for the Raiders? I think this was obviously the right decision. I mean, Pete was senile. It was a complete disaster.
Don't hire the oldest coach in NFL history. Raiders get the number 1 pick. I think that's the only reason you would want this job is you look at somebody that you're going to bring here. I wouldn't want this job. I don't know who the hell the Raiders go after. If I was a prospective coach, I would stay as far as possible away from Vegas. I don't think Vegas has any fans. I think they have very few good players. I mean, in Vegas. I mean, actually in...
I think they have some.
They have no aura in that stadium.
You want to bring them back to Oakland?
Yes, I do. The black hole scared me going to play in Oakland. The Vegas doesn't instill any fear in me. And they're going to trade Max Crosby this offseason. So, I don't know, man. I wouldn't want this job if I was a coach.
Yeah, I tend to agree, but I don't know. It's tough to turn down a head coaching job. We'll see. I think same names are going to come up here.
Bring Rich Bisaccia back.
Go for. That would be a crazy play. Antonio Pierce. That was bad. I don't know. The Raiders really are incompetent. They are as incompetent as anybody, and I certainly did not think this year was going to be this disgusting, but it was. If it's an offensive guy, if it's a defensive guy. There's a lot of good coordinators out there. I really like Jeff Hafley. I think he's very good. Kingsbury,
both the
we'll
Kubiaks
see. I don't know. Maybe
yeah.
he's more of an OC than a head coach, but I agree. I think the Kubiaks, especially Clint, I mean, he's a really good play caller. We'll see if he's got the head coach temperament. You don't know until you try it. But anybody, and I mean anybody, like potentially a piece of wood, a bicycle, might be a better head coach than Pete Carroll was this past year. Like your aunt, for example. The last of these very recent firings, Logan, Jonathan Gannon is out in Arizona. Was this the right decision?
Yeah. I think so. I just don't think Gannon is an elevator. I think he's a good coordinator. You saw that during the run with Philadelphia. I don't think he's going to get another shot at being a head coach. I just feel like you would have seen it. I think the Cardinals gave him ample time. They get bit by the injury bug, but you would have just delivered more if you were a great coach. I think he's just more destined to somebody will snatch him up. He'll be a great coordinator for them. Hey, Pittsburgh. Fuck Terrell Austin. Get him out of here. Please. Sure. He sucks. They don't make adjustments. Even though Pittsburgh made the playoffs, I would love for them to look at their coordinators and make a difference, maybe hold on to Arthur Smith. I'm indifferent about him. I don't like Terrell Austin. I would love for him to be replaced. Gannon's a good DC. He'll get snatched up by some team in the hiring process.
Yeah, but I agree. This had to happen. The Cardinals, somewhat quietly, one of the worst and most disappointing teams in the NFL for a while now. They have 15 wins in the Jonathan Gannon era. That's the last 3 years. The only teams with fewer are the Titans and the Giants. So there's just no way with the results that you were going to be able to justify keeping him. You gave him 3 years, and a lot went wrong. I mean, Drew Petzing wasn't a good offensive coordinator. The Cardinals need a pretty hard reset, and they're in a pretty bad spot. And we'll see what happens with Kyler. I don't think he figures into their future plans. Mercurial, somewhat unavailable, especially this season, inconsistent, and the team is just continually trending downwards. Obviously, he was hurt this year, but with how Jacoby played and how the offense played fine, the defense was a disaster. The offense has talent. They put up a lot of garbage time points, but it didn't really feel like they missed Kyler so much as they were just a bad football team with or without him. So, yeah, Gannon had to be gone from Arizona. All right. Happy Insurrection Day, everybody. Logan wanted me to say. Also, happy time for me. Happy time for Cars, because I won game picks, baby. That's right. I beat out Logan. We picked every game this NFL season.
One game.
And I got one more
game.
right. Well, Logan, whether it's an inch or it's a mile, I won.
Very true.
So I'm going to get to decide whatever I want.
Am I
to be your
0-2? Have we done game picks 2 years? I've lost by one game, both times.
I'm like that, bro. I'm clutch. I'm like the bum.
Chargers-Raiders got us last time, man.
Is that true?
I'm pretty sure it was.
Wow.
I think it was that Chargers-Raiders game.
Wait, 2021?
Wasn't that it?
Wait, like when the Raiders made the playoffs?
Yeah, wasn't that the game?
Maybe. Has it been that long since
I don't.
we did
I feel like
game
we
picks?
boycotted
should do it every year. It's fun.
No, we boycotted
We did
game picks
boycott.
for a while.
We did boycott it, but it was fun to bring it back, and now I get to choose a punishment for you, and I'll think about that. But I don't want to do that to you on Insurrection Day. I know how much it means to you.
It's like a
I don't wanna
holiday,
kill
you
your
know.
vibe. Of course. Well, it's more than that. It's,
I
it's
woke
a
up.
sacred day.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and you said, I'm going to insurrect. I said, hell yeah, brother. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Hope you enjoyed. I can't wait for the playoffs.
Neither can I.
I'm utterly giddy. By the way, crazy NBA stuff happening. No giddy. That's not a Josh Giddey reference, okay? We can't ruin that word just like we did to Diddy. I am very interested in some of the stuff going around the NBA. We're going to talk about that. I did talk about one of the most interesting lads in the NBA, Victor Wembanyama. I just broke down some of his incredible defense this year and asked the question, is he the best defender this century already? I don't know. Watch the video. Find out. So that's on our YouTube channel along with all of our full episodes, NFL and NBA. You can listen to them across all audio platforms. And you know where to find us on social, TikTok and Instagram at NerdSesh, Twitter at @nerd_sesh to see clips from the show, graphics from the show, which will come out for all of our playoff predictions, and, of course, our daily trivia content. And if you want, you can join our Discord to chat with the gang. That is linked at the link tree across our social media bios. So with that, as always, appreciate you guys. Can't wait for some playoff football. We'll see you, well, before the weekend with our NBA show. Then Saturday night, Sunday night, and Monday night, baby, because we got some football to talk about. And I've been Carson Brabber.
I have been Logan Camden.
And this was Nerd Sesh.